Chapter 2794. The Hundred-Eyed Giant took advantage of the time when Yi Shiwen was killing the celestial experts to escape into the depths of the universe. Although they were all his subordinates, he obviously couldn't care less about them at this moment. It was his greatest fortune to be able to escape. As for the others, he couldn't care about them at all. You only remembered now that you want to leave? Isn't it a little too easy for you? Yi Shiwen sneered. Even when he was killing the heroes, Yi Shiwen had never forgotten about him. In an instant, the Hundred-Eyed Giant disappeared without a trace. The speed of a quasi-emperor had already touched the level of space. It was simply unimaginable for these divine kings. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen took a step forward and caught up with the Hundred-Eyed Giant in an instant. Yi Shiwen had left a spiritual imprint on the Hundred-Eyed Giant. Even if he fled to the ends of the earth, he wouldn't be able to escape Yi Shiwen's pursuit. In just a short time, the Hundred-Eyed Giant didn't know how many worlds and layers of space the Hundred-Eyed Giant had traversed. However, he was still tracked by Yi Shiwen in an instant. In an instant, he was already in front of the Hundred-Eyed Giant. How is this possible? The Hundred-Eyed Giant was almost scared to death when he saw Yi Shiwen chasing behind him. He originally thought that he had already escaped. He didn't know how many worlds he had traversed in the blink of an eye. He didn't expect that even so, Yi Shiwen was still like a ghost that wouldn't leave him alone. Yi Shiwen was still following him closely and had no intention of letting him go. I told you, it's too late for you to escape now. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. I can give you a chance now. You can rely on me. Tell me clearly what the situation is on the other side of the seal. I won't kill you if you perform well. Don't even think about it. The Hundred-Eyed Giant roared loudly. He was completely enraged by Yi Shiwen. In his opinion, this was simply a form of humiliation. Yi Shiwen wanted to humiliate him. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. It seems that you really don't want to accept a toast only to drink a forfeit. Roar! The Hundred-Eyed Giant roared angrily. His hands tore out endless rays of light. Hundreds of eyes suddenly erupted with a shocking light and rushed towards Yi Shiwen, intending to kill him. Bang! Yi Shiwen's hands made a seal and formed a sky-flipping seal. He smashed it down and annihilated all the incoming attacks. Then he roared again. 3 seals in 1 die. Sky-turning seal. Inverted ocean seal. Han seal. The 3 seals combined into one and smashed down fiercely, causing the power of the heaven and earth to be overturned before it came crashing down. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Hundred-Eyed Giant screamed pitifully and was beaten to death. Its corpse was also collected by Yi Shiwen so that it could be used to feed the demon flag. Yi Shiwen didn't stop after killing this Hundred-Eyed Giant. He immediately returned to the Hidden Valley. At this time, the entire Hidden Valley was in a state of jubilation. The remaining Tian race experts were no match for them at all. They were surrounded by the Hidden Valley experts who were completely excited and wanted to kill them all. Previously, Yi Shiwen had said that as long as one made a great contribution, he or she would be able to obtain the Emperor's source. In fact, they could even obtain Yi Shiwen's help. This temptation could be said to be extremely strong, and no one could ignore such a temptation. Previously, because of the existence of the Hundred-Eyed Giant, they didn't dare to attack. Now that the Hundred-Eyed Giant had escaped, the biggest threat was gone. How could they not attack quickly? The most troublesome batch had already been killed by Yi Shiwen's sword just now. Now, the remaining ones were all people that they could deal with. For a time, there were shouts of killing everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. Those Tian race experts who originally followed along to loot the Hidden Valley were dumbfounded. They didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Not only were they not the hunters, but they had also become the prey. At this time, they wanted to escape, but it was too late. The Hidden King and several other divine kings who had just been promoted took action one after another, and all of a sudden, their escape route was blocked. Even if they wanted to escape, it was useless. However, even so, the remaining cleanup continued for a full 10 days and 10 nights. Finally, those Tian race experts who knew that there was no hope of escape were all killed, and their ferocious nature had been stimulated. It could almost be said that everyone had gained something. Many people had accumulated a lot of merits and could exchange for Emperor Source from Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't care. Anyway, he still had a lot of Emperor Source. It was not a big deal to exchange for 1 or 2 pieces. The consumption of Emperor Source for others was not as terrifying as his consumption. Compared to the consumption of Emperor Source for his time robe, it was simply a rarity. As soon as Yi Shiwen returned, he asked the Hidden King and the others to send the statistics of the battle results to him. Yi Shiwen could reward them one by one. This was what he had to do as the Valley Master. He could ignore many mundane matters, but he couldn't let others handle these matters on his behalf. He directly sent a clone to handle these matters. And his main body brought the Hidden King and the others into the small world where the meeting was held. Everyone has worked hard in this battle. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly, glanced at everyone, and said, "It's not hard at all." Valley Master, killing the 100-eyed giant was the most difficult. Yes, in this battle, Valley Master has worked hard and made great contributions. At this time, everyone already knew that the 100-eyed giant was killed by Yi Shiwen, and they were inexplicably shocked. Previously, Yi Shiwen's story was just a rumor, but this time, they saw it with their own eyes. He was an extremely powerful quasi-emperor. Regardless of whether it was in a regal sect or a lineage that had produced an emperor, he had an extremely high status. Ordinary people would never be able to become a quasi-emperor in their lifetime, but now, he had actually died in front of them. Such a shock was almost no less than the death of a real emperor. Although the legend of the invincibility of the emperor had been spread for countless years, but how many people had actually seen the emperor? Even the recent Qin emperor had proven his Tao, and it had been countless years. Until now, the matter of the emperor had become a legend. Instead, it was not as real as the appearance of a quasi-emperor, and it was more shocking. At this time, their hearts were much more at ease. Even if they encountered a great calamity, with such an invincible Valley Master leading them, their chances of surviving this great calamity would be much higher. Not to mention, this might be a huge opportunity. At that time, they might even be able to go to a higher level. It was also possible. But I believe that everyone should also understand that this is just the beginning, and the real great calamity has not even begun, Yi Shiwen said faintly. At this time, everyone suddenly remembered that even if they killed the 100-eyed giant quasi-emperor, it did not mean that they could sit back and relax. On the contrary, this was just the beginning of the great calamity. And the great calamity had just begun, and there were already quasi-emperor level characters appearing. Next, wouldn't there be emperor-level masters appearing? No one knew what had happened in the sealed land over there. Even if the Emperor of the Sky Clan could not come out for a while, but after a long time, who knew what would happen? Once the Emperor-level masters appeared, then it would be a repeat of the previous 2 war of resistance against the heavens. Many people could not help but shudder at the thought of the previous 2 battles against the heavens, where blood flowed like a river. In such a great battle, God King level experts were like cannon fodder. They died just like that, and even quasi-emperor level experts could barely protect themselves. If one wanted to move unhindered in a region, it would only be possible if a sovereign emperor level expert personally took action. Divine masters like them could not even be regarded as cannon fodder. It was unknown how many of them would die in a minute. What was worse was that at that time, there were still a few emperor-level masters in the Allied forces. Now, in the Allied forces, not to mention the emperor-level masters, even the news of the emperor-level masters was something that happened countless years ago. This cast a huge shadow over this great calamity. If an emperor-level expert really appeared, then let alone using this danger to soar into the sky, whether they could even protect themselves would become a topic worth discussing. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen, waiting to see what he planned to do. Yi Shiwen said, "Now, we can only take one step at a time. No matter what, the first thing we have to do is to absorb experts from all sides and enhance our own strength. Only when our own strength is stronger can we cope with more storms and waves." Yi Shiwen's words sounded like nothing to everyone. However, after thinking about it carefully, this was also the most effective way. The stronger they were, the higher their chances of survival would be. After all, they were just ordinary king-level sections. They did not have the inheritance of the Emperor-level masters. Having a Dao tool to protect them was undoubtedly much better. However, at this time, everyone suddenly remembered that Yi Shiwen seemed to have a Dao tool in hand. This time, the reason why the hundred-eyed giant chose to attack was also because of this Dao tool. With a Dao tool in hand, their chances of surviving the crisis would be a little higher. Just as everyone was discussing, a piece of news came in. The Northstar family had been attacked by a powerful master of the celestial race. Now, they had sent an envoy to ask for help. This news instantly caused an uproar in the Hidden Valley. Everyone in the Hidden Valley knew about the Northstar family very well. After all, they were basically neighbors. The Northstar family was a human family. Its founding ancestor was the Northstar King. Among the many human kings, the Northstar King was one of the more low-key ones. Usually, he rarely fought with others. Even some low-level disciples of the Hidden Valley did not know about the Northstar family. Only the higher-ups knew about it. Now, just like in the Hidden Valley, the Northstar family was also attacked by a master of the celestial race. Chapter 2795. Yi Shiwen recalled that the Beichen family clan and the Hidden Valley were considered neighbors. Of course, the concept of neighbors was different from that of the mortal world. However, the two sects were considered to be the closest king-rank sects and were usually competitors. To the Hidden Valley, they were also a potential competitor. Hence, they were constantly paying attention to them and did not dare to relax. However, the good thing was that the Beichen family clan kept a low profile. Or rather, they knew that they were weaker than the Hidden Valley. Among the Beichen family clan, the strongest person was their founding patriarch, the Beichen King. However, the Beichen King himself was only a late-stage king-ranked realm martial artist. He was even weaker than the Hidden King. Compared to the entire Hidden Valley, he was even weaker. Under such circumstances, they naturally would not easily clash with the Hidden Valley. Hence, they gave the impression that the Hidden Valley was relatively low profile. Of course, the Hidden Valley would not find trouble with the Beichen family clan for no reason. After all, the Beichen family clan belonged to the human race. Among the three major races, the human race was considered the strongest, especially because of the relationship between the Qin Emperor and the martial arts sect that he had left behind. The human race was very active in the various realms. Moreover, the Hidden Valley did not belong to any powerful race. It was considered a sect of itinerant cultivators. Hence, they did not want to provoke such a prominent race. The few kings and divine masters looked at each other in disbelief. Even though the Beichen family clan was far weaker than the Hidden Valley, it was still a king-ranked sect. As long as it reached the level of a king-ranked sect, it would be invincible and indestructible. However, the Beichen family clan had actually come forward to ask for help. Had the situation really reached such a critical stage? During this period of time, the Hidden Valley had been constantly attacked by the heavenly race. They could barely take care of themselves and did not have the time to care about the situation of others. At this time, they suddenly receive a request for help from the Beichen family clan. Only then did they have the time to pay attention to the situation. Indeed, the surrounding king-rank sects had been attacked. It was not just the Hidden Valley. Of course, the surprise attack that they had encountered was not as large as the one in Hidden Valley. First, a peak divine king of the 10 great king realms had personally attacked, followed by a quasi-emperor. Such a lineup was enough to challenge an emperor's inheritance. But now, all of them had been used on Hidden Valley. After experiencing such a battle, ordinary small battles were nothing to them. They were already completely calm. "Invite the people of the Beichen clan in," Yi Shiwen said. Not long after, a few young men and women directly walked in, led by a young man who looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. He was dressed in a luxurious robe and looked very rich, but his face showed a bit of anxiety. Behind him were a few men and women. Every single one of them had an extraordinary bearing, and even the weakest of them was at the imperishable plane. The man in the lead was a divine master who had stepped into the sage plane. Clearly, they were the elite disciples of the Northstar family, and yet they had been sent out to ask for help. Yi Shiwen's mind spun, and he immediately guessed what they were planning. Now, the Northstar family must have reached an extremely dangerous stage, so they had sent these people out. In a large-scale battle at the level of the regal sects, these disciples would not mean much. But on the contrary, if the North Star family was destroyed, then these disciples could be used to revive the North Star family. And if there was a chance in the future, they could restore the prestige of the North Star family. These things were not difficult to guess. If it was the Hidden Valley, they would most likely do the same. After all, they couldn't let the entire sect be annihilated. Not only would they die, even their Tao inheritance would be completely destroyed. That would be the most terrifying thing. Yi Shiwen. The man in the lead looked at Yi Shiwen, his eyes wide, and he could not help but look incredulous. He had come to Hidden Valley to ask for help, but he did not expect to see Yi Shiwen here, and not as an ordinary divine king, but sitting on the throne of the Valley Master. This had completely subverted his view of the world, and it was on the verge of collapse. "Why, do you know me?" Yi Shiwen looked at the young man and asked. "I am Beichin Yuan." "Brother Yi, no, Valley Master Yi, it is normal that you do not know me. In fact, I also participated in the Kerfurst Road back then, but compared to Brother Yi, I am nothing at all. It is like the brilliance of the moon and the brilliance of a firefly. There is no comparison at all. It is normal that Valley Master Yi does not know me." The young man, Beichin Yuan, smiled bitterly. When the Kerfurst Road opened back then, he also participated in that Kerfurst Road, but unlike Yi Shiwen, in the Kerfurst Road where countless old monsters gathered, ordinary geniuses could not stand out at all. In the North Star family, he was also known as the #1 expert of this generation, and was usually very conceited, but after participating in the Kerfurst Road, he truly understood how many experts there were in this world. Especially in this realm, there were countless experts, just like the sand in the Ganges River, innumerable. In such an environment, he, who was known as the #1 expert of this generation in the North Star family, did not have much glory and could only be regarded as a small expert. From the beginning to the end, he did not make a big name for himself, so Yi Shiwen did not notice him. On the contrary, although Yi Shiwen did not notice him, he knew Yi Shiwen, and he was very clear that Yi Shiwen was simply a super monster. Since Yi Shiwen entered the Kerfurst Road, he had been constantly making a name for himself, and constantly defeating experts who had been famous for many years. It seemed that the countless years of accumulated fame of these people had all become Yi Shiwen's stepping stones. Although he did not participate in the last battle, he had heard people talk about it. Yi Shiwen single-handedly fought against all the heroes of the world, and actually single-handedly defeated all the heroes of the world, one after another. Although in the end, he failed to obtain the opportunity to become emperor, it did not damage his reputation. Many people said that that battle was not a crime of fighting, and no one expected that in the end, the celestial race would be able to interfere. It was simply beyond everyone's expectations. Therefore, he remembered very clearly that in this generation, Yi Shiwen was indeed fully deserving of being the #1, and he was invincible. Later on, Yi Shiwen directly killed his way into the Divine King realm, and it was unknown how many Divine King realm experts he had defeated for a long time. In the beginning, he could still look up to him, but when he reached the king-ranked realm, he did not even have the qualifications to look up to him. It should be known that in the entire Northern Star family, there was only one king-ranked expert, the Northern Star King. One could well imagine how much shock Yi Shiwen had given him. And now, when he saw Yi Shiwen again, Yi Shiwen had already become the Hidden Valley Lord. This was simply a fantasy. It was as if he had returned to the Northern Star family, and suddenly the old ancestor had passed the position of clan master to him. It was simply impossible, but Yi Shiwen had done it, so he was even more speechless. He only felt that his worldview was about to be subverted. "I see." Yi Shiwen nodded. At that time, there were many people who participated in the Kerfurst Road, and there were even more people that he did not remember. This was not strange. It was just that he would not have paid too much attention to ordinary divine masters back then, let alone now. "Why did the Northern Star family send you here to ask for help? What's the situation now?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Sai, it's a long story. I don't know what's going on now. The Divine Race Army suddenly appeared and directly destroyed our family's line of defense. Even the old ancestor was injured. Right now, we are just barely maintaining the array formation, but we are powerless to fight back." Bei Chen Yuan sighed and said, "A divine king realm expert has been mobilized?" Yi Shiwen asked. "And that's right," Bei Chen Yuan said. "It is very likely that a peak divine king realm expert has been mobilized. That's why the old ancestor sent me here. We must ask the hidden king to help." Bei Chen Yuan said according to his initial estimates. According to the original intelligence of the Northern Star family, the strongest expert in the Hidden Valley was the Hidden King. He should already have the strength of a peak divine king. Even if he did not, with the help of the Northern Star family's array formation, they should be able to repel the peak divine king realm expert. That was why he had asked for the Hidden King's help. As for Yi Shiwen, he did not have much hope. Although it seemed that he had become the Hidden Valley Master, it did not mean that he could deal with a peak divine king. It might just be an ordinary transfer of power. Right now, our family is in a precarious situation. We were sent out by the old ancestor after he tried everything he could. Now, we can't go back at all. We are all surrounded. Bei Chen Yuan sighed repeatedly. Even with his wisdom, he was helpless in the face of such a situation. Senior Hidden King, please help us. This junior and the Northern Star family will be forever grateful. How could he not know why these people had been sent out? If the Northern Star family was destroyed, then they would be the spark, the only hope for the Northern Star family to recover. The Hidden King looked at Yi Shiwen, then laughed out loud and said, "Nephew, you're really muddle-headed. You really have eyes but failed to recognize a precious jade. With our Valley Master here, do you still have to be afraid that your Beichen clan won't be able to solve the problem?" Bei Chen Yuan looked at Yi Shiwen doubtfully. He naturally hoped that the Hidden King would help, but now the Hidden King had kicked the ball to Yi Shiwen. What was the meaning of this? Did he not intend to help? Although Yi Shiwen was strong, could he deal with a peak divine king? That's right. Now that the world was in chaos, everyone had to go their separate ways. Who would have the time to care about other people's business? Chapter 2796. Bei Chen Yuan still couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen had the ability to deal with a peak divine king. After all, the Valley Master didn't mean that he was the strongest. In his opinion, the Hidden Valley was very optimistic about Yi Shiwen's strength, so they made him the Valley Master in advance. He was also extremely sad at this time. "Nephew, it seems that you still have some doubts," Hidden King said with a smile. How could he not know what Bei Chen Yuan was thinking? If it was him, he wouldn't believe it if he hadn't experienced it himself. "Brother Bei Chen, don't worry. I can help you solve this matter." Yi Shiwen immediately agreed. For him, this was a good opportunity to expand the strength of the Hidden Valley. The rise of a huge force was accompanied by the union of a main core force and a bunch of subsidiary forces. The Hidden Valley itself had many subsidiary forces. However, these weren't enough for the current Yi Shiwen. He wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with those emperor's inheritances. So, it was impossible to rely on the subsidiary forces of ordinary, immortal inheritances. If he wanted to accumulate a huge force, it was possible to absorb the subsidiary forces of those king-level sections. Behind every immortal emperor's legacy were many regal sects that acted as their subsidiary powers. Some of these powers had come to rely on them, while others had experts from their own sects that had gone out to establish their own regal sects. It was precisely because of this that an invincible emperor's legacy was accumulated. Of course, whether or not there was an emperor was also an important criterion. Since ancient times, there had never been an inheritance that could be on par with those immortal emperor inheritances without an emperor. This was because a great emperor could bring too much heritage and inheritance to an inheritance, as well as many means and trump cards that outsiders didn't know about. Without an emperor inheritance, it was impossible to truly understand how powerful they were. This was what Yi Shiwen wanted to do now. He wanted to upgrade the Hidden Valley to the point where it could compete with those emperor inheritances. This in itself was the most incredible thing. It was almost more incredible than becoming an emperor. After all, there were precedents of becoming an emperor. To make an ordinary king-level sect into an emperor inheritance in one fell swoop, without an emperor was a magnificent feat that no one had ever achieved. Yi Shiwen's current conditions weren't bad. He had more than one Dao tool in hand. In terms of inheritance, the existence of Emo was already not inferior to those immortal emperors' inheritance. The only thing he lacked was the accumulation of resources. This was not a gap that he could not make up for. That was why he had such great ambitions in his heart. More importantly, he did not know if he would have the chance to become an emperor in this lifetime. However, in this chaotic world, the stronger one was, the higher the chances of survival would be. Now, he was no longer alone. Even his parents' lives were linked to his, so he could not afford to fail in the slightest. If he wanted to become a powerful legacy on par with a sovereign lord's legacy, it would be too late for him to build up his foundation now. The fastest way to do so was to absorb the various factions and experts. Not just those independent experts, he could even absorb the factions of King Conferal's sects. The Northstar family just so happened to meet this condition. They were originally a sect of kings and possessed great strength, but their strength was not strong enough to threaten the dominant position of the Hidden Valley. It was just the right time to absorb it. "Thank you, Valley Master Yi," Northstar Yuan said hurriedly. Regardless of whether he could do it or not, Yi Shiwen had already expressed his stance. He could only thank him. "However, Brother Northstar, you should also know that our Hidden Valley has just been attacked by the heavenly race. We have also suffered great losses. It is impossible for us to help you unconditionally," Yi Shiwen said. "Of course, as long as you can help our Northstar family get out of this predicament, we will do our best to satisfy you no matter what you want," Beichen Yuan said quickly without hesitation. At this time, no matter what Yi Shiwen wanted, he would agree to it. After all, it was much better than being destroyed in the end. "I am not greedy for anything from your Northstar family. Recently, our Hidden Valley has formed an alliance called the Hidden Alliance. It is to unite everyone that can be united. Our goal is to fight against the heavenly race and survive this great calamity," Yi Shiwen said lightly. Many divine masters and divine kings in the Hidden Valley could not help but feel excited when they heard this. They had never heard of this Hidden Alliance before. Obviously, it was an organization that had just been established by the Valley Master. However, they would not expose Yi Shiwen at this time. Wouldn't it be courting death to embarrass him on the spot? Of course, the most important thing was that this sounded good. An alliance with the Hidden Valley as its core would have tyrannical forces like the King's sect as its members. In the past, only the colossi of the Emperor's inheritance were qualified to come forward and organize such an alliance. However, Yi Shiwen wanted to promote such an alliance at this time. Just thinking about it made them a little excited. This was also the best opportunity. If this was an era of peace, who would care about the Hidden Valley's call? It would be good enough if they did not laugh at the Hidden Valley for overestimating themselves. Why would they respond to the call? Even if they wanted to participate, wouldn't it be better to join the alliance established by the Emperor-level legacies than to join this so-called Hidden Alliance? However, now that they were in chaos, they had no choice. They could either join the Hidden Alliance and obtain protection or die. If they were smart, they should know what to choose. At this time, they finally understood what Yi Shiwen meant when he said that there were opportunities in the midst of danger. It might be dangerous for others, but it was an unprecedented opportunity for the Hidden Valley. Beichen Yuan was not a fool. Of course, he understood that this alliance was not that simple. It was easy to join, but it would not be that easy to withdraw. Once they joined, they would be tying the Beichun family to the Hidden Valley's war chariot. When that time came, they would naturally have to follow the Hidden Valley's lead. They would not be as free as before. In an era of peace, the Beichen family was a veteran sect of kings. Even if they did not join any alliance forces, they could still live very well. On the contrary, in order to rope them in, all the alliances would have to give them some respect. However, now that they were in chaos, everything was different. They could benefit from both sides. Their neutral policy also meant that they did not have a strong backer. If they encountered any danger, it would be a big problem. This was also their tragedy. He immediately sensed Yi Shiwen's huge ambition. In other words, Yi Shiwen did not bother to hide it at all. This was an open and above-board plot. He was not afraid of others knowing about it. Yi Shiwen really had a big appetite. At the same time, Yi Shiwen was calmly looking at him. He wasn't anxious at all. That was because he needed to rescue the Bachin family, not the Hidden Valley. He had the initiative in his hands, so he was naturally very calm. It would be best if the Bachin family knew what was good for them. If they did not, then they were just unlucky. In troubled times, although Yi Shiwen had some power, he could not save everyone. He could not protect everyone. He could only protect some people as much as possible. Okay, we agree. Bachin Yuan immediately agreed and said while gritting his teeth. At this time, the Bachin family had been forced into a corner. They could not refuse at all. They could not refuse either. The result of refusing was death. They understood this. Although they would have to follow the lead of the Hidden Valley after joining the alliance, they would definitely lose a lot of autonomy. Even so, it was much better than being exterminated. As long as Valley Master Yi can save the Bachin family, we will join the Hidden Alliance and follow the lead of Valley Master Yi in the future. So what? Bachin Yuan said calmly. Once he had made a decision, he was no longer hesitant. He was not a person who was hesitant in the first place. However, he still had a small trick up his sleeves. There was only one condition for the Northern Star family to join the Hidden Alliance, and that was that Yi Shiwen had to be able to save the Northern Star family from a crisis. Only then would they choose to join. You can make decisions on behalf of the Bachin King? Yi Shiwen stared at him and asked. Yes. Before coming out this time, the old ancestor has already given me the authority to act according to the situation. As long as it does not cross the bottom line, I can agree. Bachin Yuan said, while looking at Yi Shiwen. Before coming out, even if he thought of the worst scenario, which was being extorted by the Hidden Valley, he did not think that he would actually have to join this hidden alliance. However, he believed that if the old ancestor was present, he would also agree. After all, there was nothing worse than being exterminated. Upon hearing Bachin Yuan's words, many of the divine masters and divine kings in the Hidden Valley could not help but look excited. They did not expect that the Hidden Valley would one day be able to take in a king-level sect as a vassal and gain such a powerful younger brother. Although it was done in the name of an alliance, anyone with a discerning eye could see that this was an alliance of vassals and not an alliance of equals. It was just an alliance with the Hidden Valley as its absolute core. The way everyone looked at Yi Shiwen suddenly changed. Originally, some people could not accept that Yi Shiwen had become the Hidden Valley Master and felt that his qualifications were still too shallow. However, no one doubted Yi Shiwen's qualifications now. He had just come to power, but he had already achieved an unprecedented feat, although the Hidden King had been doing an outstanding job as the Hidden Valley Master for so many years. He was clearly inferior to Yi Shiwen. With such a good Valley Master, what else could they ask for? Yi Shiwen nodded and said, "All right, it's good that you can make the decision. I believe that the Bachin King is not someone who goes back on his word. In that case, I will save the Bachin family now." Chapter 2797. Now, Bachin Yuan looked at Yi Shiwen, a little stunned. Although killing decisively was a necessary quality for every successful person, this was too swift and decisive. However, this was too swift and decisive. Didn't they need to organize the army to advance? Wasn't this a little too rash? That's right now. Yi Shiwen laughed and said, "You must be wondering why I didn't even gather people and said that I would help you solve the problem. There is no need. Tell me the spatial coordinates of your side." Bachin Yuan immediately told Yi Shiwen without hesitation. Yi Shiwen roared as soon as he finished speaking. A pair of wings suddenly stretched out behind him, emitting the aura of space and constantly fluctuating laws. Suddenly, a strong wind blew. The universe reversed, and the universe shook. Everyone felt a powerful force boiling, and they felt a sense of suffocation. Then, they saw Yi Shiwen's wings flashing continuously, and the power of space directly pierced through the space in front of Yi Shiwen. Then, a complete space channel appeared in front of Yi Shiwen, and his body constantly emitted a powerful aura. A complete space channel. Bachin Yuan looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. He had seen many space transmission arrays, and even had a way to build a space transmission array himself. However, directly tearing a complete space channel was simply impossible for him. This required an unprecedented understanding of the power of space to be able to achieve this. Obviously, this was not something he could imagine. Even his ancestor, the Bachan monarch, couldn't do this. This kind of spatial tear was already something that a transcendent divine king could do. It was rumored that powerful emperor lords could even penetrate the universe with a single blow, reaching the end of the universe and crossing countless voids and planes. This was already far more powerful than they had imagined. Even quasi-emperors already had this kind of power. Although they could not fight outside the endless cosmic sea like emperor lords, they could still transmit their attacks through space. This in itself was amazing. At this moment, everyone could clearly hear countless battle cries coming from the other side of the space channel. It was a battlefield. That's right, it's our side, one of the youths from the North Star family said with tears in his eyes. They wouldn't understand how important the North Star family was to them unless they were faced with the threat of extinction. At this time, on the other side of the space channel, a huge beast was crawling in space. Its body exuded a terrifying law, and it spat out a powerful energy beam that directly swept across. They continued to break through the North Star family's defensive line. Under his attacks, the North Star family's defensive line was in imminent danger. However, North Star King hadn't appeared. Just as North Star Yuan had said, he was injured. Perhaps he was currently recuperating. "That's him!" Bei Chun Yuan exclaimed. He watched as the huge beast tore through the spell formation and grabbed the experts of the North Star clan, then swallowed them whole. The screams of the North Star clan rang out in his ears. To him, this scene was too heart-wrenching. In addition to that beast, there were also a few powerful God Kings attacking the North Star family's defensive line. "See how I deal with him?" Yi Shiwen said. Just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen would directly pass through the space channel and rush over, they saw Yi Shiwen make his move. Overturning the sky seal, Yi Shiwen's big hand transformed into a huge seal and slammed down on the Beast King. The Beast King that was wreaking havoc immediately sensed Yi Shiwen's attack and was immediately shocked. This was because this attack didn't come from nearby, but from the sky. It was as if a huge crack had been torn in the sky, and the attack came crashing down. This kind of method was completely beyond his imagination. Impossible. Could it be that a quasi-emperor expert has made a move? The Beast King didn't have time to think and hurriedly fled into the distance. You want to escape?" Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. The overturning the sky seal followed him like a shadow and directly smashed down. Bang! The Pinnacle Beast King was smashed on the spot, and his physical body directly turned into a mist of blood that filled the sky. The next moment, the Beast King in the distance reassembled his physical body with great difficulty. His eyes were filled with fear, and he simply couldn't believe that someone could attack him from so far away. It was not within the range of his spirit perception at all. With his cultivation, his spirit perception could sense very far away. Even if he hid in a different space, it would be useless. However, he couldn't sense anything at all. One could imagine how far away this attack was. Even among the quasi-emperors, there were only a few who could do such a terrifying cross-domain attack. It might not be difficult to use the transmission formation to send one's own attack, but to send one's own attack to another battlefield was not something that ordinary people could do. Among the quasi-emperors, there were very few who could do this, and it was close to a legendary level. "It's not dead yet." Yi Shiwen was slightly surprised. He didn't expect this Beast King to be so resilient. It was not dead even after such a surprise attack, but he was just a little surprised. Clang! A powerful sword light flashed above his palm, swallowing the essence of the sun and moon, and instantly slashed down. The sword light pierced through the space channel and directly slashed towards the Beast King. "I wonder which senior is here." The Beast King wanted to curry favor with such a terrifying quasi-emperor. Even if the Tian race also had a quasi-emperor, they probably wouldn't be able to save him. However, Yi Shiwen had no desire to say anything more to him. Bang! There was another loud explosion, and the flesh of this Beast King exploded on the spot. Even its soul was destroyed by Yi Shiwen's sword. Yi Shiwen's sword had severed its soul. This was the ruler's sword will of the Tian race. He was originally a fighter of the Tian race, but now he had died in the hands of the Tian race's move. This in itself was also a kind of irony. Dead. Bei Chun Yuan saw the Beast King die tragically with his own eyes, and still had a look of complete disbelief on his face. A cross-domain attack. Such an attack was beyond the limits of what the naked eye could see, and even the spirit could not reach far away. It was just like the myths and legends. The Beast King, who had caused so many casualties to the Beichin family, and whom they hated so much, had died tragically just like that. He had only managed to block one attack, and then he was killed by the second. This kind of efficiency was too terrifying. That was not a roadside cabbage, but a peak divine king, a terrifying expert that even their ancestor, the Beichin king, was helpless against. He had died so easily and tragically. At this moment, he finally understood why the hidden king had said that he had eyes but could not see the golden jade. Indeed, he had eyes but could not see Mount Tai. He had used the thinking of a normal person to measure a monster, and naturally, he would get a completely different answer. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen's limit should be an ordinary divine king, but now he understood that he was wrong. This kind of strength had definitely surpassed the divine king level, and had reached the legendary level of a quasi-emperor. And now, not much time had passed since the end of the quasi-emperor path, but he had already grown to this point. He was simply a monster. At this moment, he was completely convinced that he could not be compared to some people. They were all humans, but they were not the same thing at all. In fact, it even made him think that they were not of the same species at all. It was not just Beichin Yuan, but the others were also completely stunned. This kind of terrifying attack was simply terrifying. If they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, they would also be helpless in the face of such an attack that they could not defend against. Compared to the surprise of the Northern Star clan, the people of the Hidden Valley were ecstatic. In this chaotic world, the stronger Yi Shiwen was, the more likely they would be able to survive. In fact, they might even be able to advance further. At this moment, Yi Shiwen did not care about the people's shock and continued to attack. Boom! 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 The divine kings of the celestial race who were causing trouble were killed by Yi Shiwen's sword. They were not even peak divine kings, so naturally, they were no match for Yi Shiwen. In just a few breaths, they were all killed by Yi Shiwen. Their blood essence was all captured by Yi Shiwen through the space channel and stored. At this moment, on the battlefield of the Beichin family, both sides finally realized what had happened. The people of the Beichin family were all shocked. Although they did not know where this helper came from, it was obvious that he was here to help them. Thank you, Senior. The experts of the Beichin family shouted one after another, hoping that this senior, who was hiding in the distance, could feel their gratitude. On the other hand, the experts of the celestial race had completely collapsed. The extremely powerful divine kings had been killed in one breath, and not even their bones were left. What kind of means could have been used to achieve this? This was not something they could fight against. After a period of commotion, they began to collapse and a large mutiny broke out. Although many of them were well-trained Dao soldiers, many more people were completely frightened. Coupled with the fact that the Beichin family had reacted and chased after them in a frenzy, the entire defensive line of the celestial race army instantly collapsed. The scene was completely a one-sided massacre. Kill! A loud shout came from the Beichin family, and a majestic figure rushed out, directly rushed into the midst of the experts of the celestial race, and began a massacre. Chapter 2798. He was too powerful. Yi Shiwen had killed those divine kings from a distance. Beichin Yuan was almost scared to death. He knew that Yi Shiwen was very powerful and that some divine kings were no match for him. But he was far from being as terrifying as he was now. He could actually kill divine kings from a distance. This was the ability of a quasi-emperor. Ordinary quasi-emperors would not be able to do this. Is he still human? The few young talents behind Beichin Yuan were so scared that they almost peed their pants. They were all dumbfounded, and their faces were pale. They even found it difficult to breathe. At this moment, they truly understood how terrifying Yi Shiwen's strength was. It was not something they could compare to. Originally, because they were born in such a sect and had been nurtured as geniuses and elites from a young age. Although the Hidden Valley was relatively strong, it was only a sect, and they did not think that it was too amazing. Although Yi Shiwen was known as the most outstanding disciple of the Hidden Valley, in their opinion, he was not much. At most, he was a little more powerful than Bei Qinyuan. Now, it seemed that he was not just a little more powerful. They could not be compared at all. In fact, Bei Qinyuan was not even qualified to carry his shoes for him. The Valley Master is indeed powerful, the Hidden King said from the bottom of his heart. He had just broken through to the strength of the 10 great divine kings and was feeling very satisfied. However, now that he had seen Yi Shiwen in action, he realized that he was still far from being comparable. Even though he had already reached the level of the 10 great divine kings, he was still far from being comparable. "Senior brother, you flatter me," Yi Shiwen said with a smile. It was very difficult for him to achieve this with his own strength. It was impossible for him to easily finish off those divine kings like he had done earlier. After all, this was a cross-domain attack. It required an extremely profound understanding of the laws of space and a heaven-defying skill. While maintaining the stability of the spatial passage, he also needed to unleash an attack that could kill a divine king. Very few people among the quasi-emperors could do this. This was under the condition that he knew the coordinates. Without the coordinates, he would be completely in the dark. Just like the legendary emperor, the ability to chase people across the universe could only be a legend. The reason he could do this was naturally because of the Time Magic Robe's ability. Using the Time Magic Robe to stabilize the spatial channel was naturally successful. However, this move consumed too much of his Emperor's source. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to intimidate Bei Qinyuan and rope in the Beichen family, he would have flown there directly. It wouldn't have taken too much time, but he could have saved a lot of money. Now that he saw the dumbfounded expressions on Bei Qinyuan and the others' faces, he knew that he had achieved his goal. Yi Shiwen looked at Bei Qinyuan and said, "Bei Qinyuan, your Beichen family's trouble should have been resolved by now. I've killed all the divine kings." "Thank you, Alliance Master." Bei Qinyuan changed his mind very quickly. After witnessing Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength, he no longer had any other thoughts. In this chaotic world, following a powerful leader was also an excellent way to get through a crisis. As for the North Star family, he was no longer worried about them. Even the God Kings had been killed. If the North Star family still had no way of dealing with them, then they would be exterminated. Without a leader, the remaining celestial experts only needed to beat them when they were down. Many experts in the Hidden Valley looked at Bei Qinyuan with satisfaction. These people from the North Star family were very tactful. Moreover, when they thought about the establishment of the Hidden Alliance, they would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Emperor's inheritance. These old monsters who had lived for countless years couldn't help but feel excited. In that case, you can go back now. When the time comes, ask the North Star King to come personally to discuss the alliance. Yi Shiwen said, "When the time comes, I will hold an alliance meeting. All the forces that have joined the Hidden Alliance can participate. When the time comes, we can slowly discuss the details." Previously, they had only established the existence of the Hidden Alliance. As for how the North Star family would join the Hidden Alliance, how their relationship with the Hidden Valley would be, how the benefits would be distributed, and how the obligations would be distributed, all of these would have to be discussed one by one. After all, both sides were monstrous existences at the level of a king. Every move they made would affect the livelihood of countless people. They couldn't make a rash decision. However, this had nothing to do with Yi Shiwen. Naturally, the Hidden King and the others would take care of it. As the Valley Master, he naturally had more important things to do. After Bei Qinyuan left with mixed feelings, Yi Shiwen spoke again. "Everyone can see that the entire world is in chaos. Now is the time for our generation to rise." Valley Master is right. After the incident with the North Star family, everyone was completely convinced. It wasn't impossible to achieve the Hidden Alliance. On the contrary, it was completely possible. Once it was achieved, they would also soar. Naturally, they were willing to cooperate with Yi Shiwen. "Now, Senior Brother Hidden King, I'll leave the matters of the sect to you. I'm going out to see if there's anything else I can help with. When the time comes, I'll pull a few more sects into the Hidden Alliance. If there's only the Hidden Valley and the North Star family, wouldn't the Hidden Alliance be a big joke? Yi Shiwen said. Normally, if Yi Shiwen mentioned the Hidden Alliance, people would only laugh at him for overestimating himself. However, things were different now. If Yi Shiwen could help them, no matter what, they had to be grateful. Even if they didn't join the Hidden Alliance, they would still be potential supporters. In this chaotic world, only by huddling together could they survive this huge calamity. They couldn't possibly not know this logic. Also, Yi Shiwen had another thought in his mind. He wanted to make use of this opportunity to train his cultivation level and reach the peak of the king-ranked realm in one go. When that time came, he would be able to dominate the entire world. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come out of the demonic lord's treasure trove. Although his cultivation speed was very fast in there, and he had the Dao fruit, the Mingxin ancient tree, and enough Tharch origins, it wasn't enough. The chaotic world had arrived. Ordinary cultivation speed was too slow in the face of this chaotic world. Only by continuously training could one have the opportunity to break through to the peak of the king-ranked realm. In the previous battle, many of our Hidden Valley's disciples also contributed. These are all rewards. Yi Shiwen waved his hand, and countless divine items flew out. These were all things that Yi Shiwen had obtained in his early years. Although Yi Shiwen was depleting spirit stones and the like very quickly, many of these divine items were left behind. As Yi Shiwen's cultivation level increased, these divine items were almost all-encompassing. Mystic Realm, Demigod, Dao Corroboration, Undying Realm, and even Sage Realm. Although these were precious, to Yi Shiwen, they weren't very useful. He could distribute them to strengthen his dictatorship. So many. Everyone's eyes were about to pop out. Ordinary god kings probably didn't even have 1/10 of this wealth. Although Yi Shiwen often faced situations where he didn't have enough divine roots and arch origins, to others, he was definitely a super nouveau riche. This was without a doubt. The entire Hidden Valley is blessed. The Hidden King recovered from his shock and said happily. He was the one who built the Hidden Valley. Naturally, he hoped that it could develop better and better. When I'm not around, Senior Brother Hidden King, you can try to recruit as many experts as possible. As for the issue of their loyalty, you don't have to worry about it now. We have plenty of means to slowly find them. Now, we need to unify the forces to the greatest extent to fight against the celestial race, said Yi Shiwen. There were many methods to detect spies in the heavens. Of course, it was difficult to use them for large-scale interrogations. However, these problems could be slowly solved later. No problem. Leave these mundane matters to me, said the Hidden King with a nod. All right, I'll take my leave first, said Yi Shiwen. His entire body turned into a ball of golden light and disappeared instantly. However, only a moment later, another figure appeared. It was still Yi Shiwen. However, everyone knew that this was not the main body, but a clone. The main body, Yi Shiwen, had already left. Although Yi Shiwen's main body was no longer around, he left a clone mainly to contact Yi Shiwen so that he could know what the situation here was. He could also rush back in time if there was a situation. It's really a blessing for the Hidden Valley to have Junior Brother Yi in charge, said the Hidden King with a sigh. Everyone nodded. Yi Shiwen's way of doing things was strong, like a thunderbolt sweeping through a cave. However, it did give everyone great hope. Yi Shiwen took a step and was already out of the Hidden Valley. The array in the Hidden Valley did not hinder him at all. His only goal now was to improve himself as much as possible. He had a faint premonition in his heart that the current turmoil was just the beginning. The real trouble was yet to come. In particular, the whereabouts of the rebellious D was a huge hidden danger in itself. Once the rebellious D was truly enlightened, it would be a huge disaster for the heavens. Even they would not be able to escape. Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. However, his figure wasn't slow at all. He had already traversed through many spaces and worlds in an instant. He had seen countless flames of war spreading in the distance. At this time, he had an intuitive understanding of the strength of the celestial race. What did it mean to contend against all the races in the world with the strength of one race? This was something that the three major races that dominated the world, the human clan, the demon clan, and the demon clan, could not achieve. The flames of war could be seen almost everywhere, and the celestial race was wreaking havoc everywhere. Yishuan thought about it. It was better to return to the true martial domain first and pick up his parents and others. In the era of peace, because of his deterrence, no one dared to touch them. However, the celestial race would not care about this now. It would be terrible if they left first. Chapter 2799. Yishuan immediately flew towards the direction of the true martial domain as soon as he had this idea. In the blink of an eye, he transcended many spaces. The demon wings on his back gave him extraordinary speed. He was simply invincible. He didn't know how many scenes of worlds collapsing along the way. It could be said to be extremely tragic. This was a disaster for the entire universe. It was like a punishment from the heavens. However, Yishuan didn't care about that at this time. The true martial domain was more important in his heart. Soon, he returned to the true martial world. His speed had reached the pinnacle. In fact, it was an unimaginably fast speed in the past. However, as soon as he entered the range of the true martial domain, he instantly discovered that he had entered a different space. This space was incomparably huge. There were mountains and rivers. It seemed like a real world. However, Yishuan's current cultivation had allowed him to see through it almost instantly. This was not a real world. It was a huge matrix. Someone had used this matrix to cover the entire true martial domain. Yishuan immediately understood. No wonder he suddenly felt something and wanted to return to the true martial domain. It turned out to be like this. It was naturally impossible to have a whim at his level of cultivation. Something must have happened. This was a warning from the heavens. This matrix is so exquisite. It can evolve into a world. Yishuan was a little surprised. He had seen countless matrix in his life. There were many of them that were exquisite. There were many of them that could put people in a desperate situation. However, he had never seen one that was so exquisite. It could evolve into a world. This must have used some special method. It actually made Yishuan a little interested. Yishuan continued to fly in the direction of the true martial domain. No matter what the problem was, he had to go and see. Soon, he saw the direction of the true martial domain. However, the true martial domain was also shrouded in this matrix. The true martial sword flew up in the true martial domain. It was resisting the crushing of the entire matrix. This matrix seemed to be crushing the entire true martial domain into pieces. The true martial sword was trying its best to resist. However, it was clearly losing ground. It was almost unable to resist. The true martial sword was good. However, the entire matrix was more exquisite. Yishuan squinted his eyes and immediately descended. He casually pointed at the sky and completely destroyed the power of the tactical matrix that was crushing down on him. The true martial sword let out a cheerful cry and flew into Yishuan's hand. They had fought side by side in the past, so the true martial sword discovered Yishuan as soon as he appeared. "Junior brother Yi," a high-pitched voice rang out, followed by a figure flying over. It was none other than Huang Wuji, who had not been seen for a long time. However, at this time, Huang Wuji had a somewhat tired look on his face. During this period of time, the world was in chaos, and even the true martial world had been affected. However, compared to the direction of the Hidden Valley, this was only a remote area. Therefore, although there were experts of the Tian clan coming and going to harass them, it was actually not a real crisis. However, even so, Huang Wuji was still exhausted. In such a world calamity, even the king-level sects could not protect themselves, let alone ordinary sections. Now, in the myriad heavens and the myriad heavens, there were countless sects and races like this being annihilated every minute. They died without a burial place. Huang Wuji could not help but sigh in relief when he saw Yishuan appear. Although Yishuan had not returned many times in these years, he had saved the entire true martial domain and the true martial school every time he returned. Therefore, in his heart, he had already formed a concept. As long as Yishuan appeared, There was naturally nothing that could not be done. In fact, this was indeed the case. He had just returned, and he had casually resolved the crisis of the true martial domain. This matrix was something that they could not resist, but Yi Shiwen had easily broken it. Senior brother, is the true martial domain all right now? Yi Shiwen asked with a somewhat solemn expression. This matrix was not simple. It's fine, but if you had come back a little later, then it might not necessarily be so. This matrix is too terrifying, Huang Wuji said with lingering fear on his face. With his cultivation and status, for him to say something like that, one could imagine how much pressure the entire array formation had put on him. It's quite troublesome, said Yi Shiwen. But fortunately, it's not too troublesome. This time, I came back for the matter of the true martial domain. That's good. Huang Wuji could not help but sigh in relief when he saw that what Yi Shiwen said was actually just a little trouble. He knew that Yi Shiwen was not a person who boasted. If Yi Shiwen said so, then he was afraid that it was indeed the case. Junior brother Yi, what's going on outside now? Why did it suddenly become like this? Asked Huang Wuji. Compared to Yi Shiwen, the true martial domain was located in a remote area. In addition, its level was very low, so there was no way for him to know these secrets. He did not even know what had happened, and it suddenly became like this. Yi Shiwen did not hide anything and immediately told him these things. Huang Wuji could not help but take a breath of cold air, and his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. If it was in the past, he might really not know what the situation was with the Celestial Clan. But now, with the existence of Yi Shiwen, the true martial domain had more and more exchanges with the outside world. Naturally, it was very clear how terrifying the Celestial Clan was. However, those were originally just a kind of terrifying legend. Now, the legendary race actually broke the seal and came back. This could not help but make him extremely shocked and worried. The Celestial Clan was an existence that could compete with the heavens at the same time. A force like the true martial domain was not an opponent at all. They were not even comparable to cannon fodder. Any god-level master could break through the true martial domain. They really had no place to escape, especially when the heavens were in the midst of war. Senior brother, don't worry. This time, I came back to solve this matter. I could directly take the true martial domain away. At that time, the war will not affect this place, said Yi Shiwen. To take a living world away, his cultivation was still a little lacking. However, didn't he have the help of the time rope? He could directly take it away with the power of time without any pressure. At most, he would consume some emperor source. It was so dangerous now, but his parents were here. How could he rest assured? At that time, Yi Junshin's side did not matter. Anyway, in the Kurfürst Road, it had already been sealed. Even the quasi-emperor level could not break the seal there and enter the Kurfürst Road. Otherwise, after so many years, the quasi-emperor road would have been broken long ago. Take the whole world away. Huang Wuji took a deep look at Yi Shiwen. He was extremely shocked. Compared with many years ago, Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to have advanced by leaps and bounds again. It was simply unimaginable. Now he had more and more contact with the outside world. The god level was not a strange thing for him. So he was also very clear that to be able to take the whole world away, it was something that could only be done with terrifying cultivation. There was only one thought left in his mind. It really is Junior Brother Yi. At this time, Yi Shiwen had become a phenomenon in his heart, a miracle. He was not an existence that he could look up to. And yes, this can isolate the war, Yi Shiwen said. He could seal the true martial domain in the time robe and wait for the turmoil to pass. Of course, this would also cause the true martial domain to be connected to him. Once he died, then the entire true martial domain would collapse together. But in the case of not finding a peach blossom land, this was already the safest method. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was confident that he would not die. There were too many people in the world who wanted his life, but unless the emperor came, he was confident that he could protect himself. Okay, no problem. I will listen to you, junior brother. Huang Wuji immediately nodded and said. He was greatly relieved in his heart. The true martial domain could be considered to have passed this crisis. By the way, how did this array come about? Senior brother, do you have any clues? asked Yi Shiwen. I don't know, but it seems to be from the demon battlefield. The core seems to be over there, said Huang Wuji. That god's mausoleum area? Yi Shiwen frowned. There was nothing to care about there. If there was, it could only be related to Emperor Qin. The place where Emperor Qin suppressed countless demon gods was there. Let's not talk about this. I will put the true martial domain away first. Yi Shiwen did not have time to go back to see his parents at this time. He immediately flew out of the true martial domain, then stretched out his big hand and suddenly grabbed toward the true martial domain. Countless time power wrapped the entire true martial domain. In the next moment, the true martial domain had disappeared without a trace. The entire universe was empty. Countless space cracks were raging, and space turbulence was blowing wantonly. This was like taking a brick directly from the wall, and a huge hole would appear. The true martial domain was also embedded in this space. Yi Shiwen wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. This grab actually consumed 70 to 80% of his boundless spiritual power. Moving a world was really not something a human could do. If it was an ordinary quasi-emperor, without a Dao tool like the time robe, it would be impossible. After putting the true martial domain away, Yi Shiwen immediately flew toward the battlefield where countless demon gods and demon gods were buried. There were too many secrets buried in that battlefield. Even after Yi Shiwen became a god, he still couldn't really understand it. There were methods of Emperor Qin in it, which was mysterious beyond words. What is that? Yi Shiwen soon approached the ancient battlefield. Suddenly, he only saw that in the sky, there were countless divine tools floating, surrounding the entire battlefield. In the core area, there were actually 9 by 9, 81 superb divine tools forming the core array. Chapter 2800. Immediately after, a ball of sword aura rose above his head and broke through the clouds in an instant. It instantly broke through the Tianqi dynasty's prince's attack. What did he see now? The formation that Emperor Qin set up back then was completely opened, and these young men and women were actually fighting within it. Now that the allied forces of the various races were united, it was impossible for them to fight separately. There were even many powerful divine king-level existences that were buried here. Back then, the monster and demon realms joined forces to invade the heaven realm. At that time, almost all the top experts of the monster and demon realms were gathered. It wasn't strange for all kinds of experts to appear here. However, this was a benefit for Yi Shiwen. He still didn't know what the situation was on the other side of the seal. Now he could capture these princes of the Sky Clan and ask them clearly. But now, these powerful beasts that once caused the death of a peak divine king were being besieged and beaten back. They weren't a match for them at all. These young men were simply ridiculously powerful. All of them were actually king-level existences. The glory of the Sky Clan? I only know that a bunch of idiots have been exiled twice. Yi Shiwen sneered. It should be said that the Tianqi dynasty itself was a branch of the Tianqi dynasty. Yi Shiwen had fought with the Tianqi emperor before, so he was very clear about the martial arts that came from the same source. There was naturally no need to mention the preciousness of the supreme grade artifact. Even if it was a divine king, not everyone could gather the materials needed to refine a supreme grade artifact. The martial arts of the Tianqi dynasty. Looks like you should be a prince of the Tianqi dynasty, Yi Shiwen said calmly. In other words, these 99 supreme quality god artifacts would require at least 100 god kings to gather. Just which clan was it that was so bold? Human? Are you deaf? Didn't you hear me? There's a big shot among us who wants to take you as a slave. This is what you've cultivated for thousands of years. The leading young man said angrily. No, a human like you also knows about my Apocalypse Dynasty's reputation. Since that's the case, why don't you just surrender? He roared, and his hands slammed down without stopping. Different from the remnants of the Tian clan, the Tian clan, who had just been released from the seal, clearly did not have such an understanding. In the teachings left behind by their ancestors, they were the only masters of the world, great figures who were born to live in the world. Ordinary experts of the heavenly race probably didn't know much about the plans of the heavenly race, but these princes were different. They were equivalent to the existence of Ji Ren Wang. So, it was enough for Yi Shiwen to ask a lot of things. Human God King, why are you still not kneeling down? Otherwise, we will spare your life. When these young men and women saw that Yi Shiwen was just an ordinary divine king, they didn't take him seriously at all. They thought that he was just an ordinary human divine king. The killing intent between this young man's eyebrows was jumping. He was completely infuriated by Yi Shiwen. He directly slammed his huge palm down towards Yi Shiwen. There was a ball of black light on his palm. He actually integrated the nomological laws he cultivated into it. What a joke. What is the Apocalypse dynasty? Even the Apocalypse Great Emperor is gone. What can you people do? Yi Shiwen said with a laugh. This time, Yi Shiwen immediately understood that they should be here for the thing left behind by the Qin Emperor. Otherwise, with the strength of this group of divine kings, they shouldn't have specially come here. It wasn't worth it at all. Which force came out? There were actually so many divine kings gathered here. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized it. It was the aura of the Tian clan. Moreover, if it was a force from the myriad heavens, it was impossible for Yi Shiwen not to have heard of it. It was simply super extravagant. Many divine kings didn't even have a supreme-grade divine artifact. Even Yi Shiwen didn't have such extravagance. If these powerful dead things were to break free from the suppression of the formation, it would be a great disaster once something happened. It was also because of this that the 4 great human kings of the desolate antiquity came here one after another to suppress it. It was really too dangerous. Whether it was noble or not depended on one's strength and not bragging. They understood this very well. Soon, Yi Shiwen entered the center of the formation. He only saw a group of young men and women actually trying to break open the divine tomb, courting death. Generally speaking, the remaining Tian clan experts in the myriad heavens wouldn't dare to call themselves dynasties. At most, they would call themselves dynasties because they were just ordinary divine kings. Back then, Yi Shiwen had only approached the periphery, and he almost fell for it. In their understanding, this simply didn't exist. In their opinion, the fact that they were willing to accept them as slaves was already a great deal. No one was a match for the Tian clan one-on-one, not to mention that they had so many people. But this human in front of them was only one person, and he even entered their formation. Since he had already entered, it was simply impossible for him to escape. At least in their education, this was indeed the case. And in the depths of the divine tomb, loud roars came. His divine king was too arrogant, but he felt that he was ignored by an ant, and he was extremely unhappy. In this divine tomb, many roars that didn't seem to be alive came from it. Yi Shiwen saw powerful evil spirits wandering around, and there were corpses that belonged to divine kings coming back to life. It seems that our Tian clan hasn't come to this world for many years, so you lowly creatures have completely forgotten our glory. That young man saw Yi Shiwen sneer and couldn't help but find it a little funny, as if he had seen the funniest thing in the world. Back then, Yi Shiwen had also received the energy of Emperor Qin, so his cultivation had also improved greatly. Have you lost your mind? I don't think so. Yi Shiwen sneered. Just in time, I was originally worried about how to find out the details of the Tian clan. Just in time, a group of princes has been sent here. You'd better tell me everything you know, otherwise, I will make you beg for death. These princes of the Tian clan dynasty had come in person, so it must not be a good thing. However, it was not difficult to see from these people that the seal was almost forced to win. It could actually accommodate so many divine kings coming in and out. This storm would blow even more violently, even far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Who are you? Yi Shiwen didn't rush to make a move, but looked at them and asked. In the divine tomb, there were many divinities that hadn't been extinguished for many years. Yi Shiwen even suspected that some of the gods might have already turned into corpses. Although there was a formation left by Emperor Qin back then, it was unclear how much effect it had after so many years. Good question. One of the young men said, Human, I'll give you a chance today. We are all princes of the Tian clan dynasty. Now, we have a big shot who has taken a fancy to you and wants to take you as a slave. This is your honor. After that big shot came out, He hasn't taken a slave yet. You will become his first slave in the myriad heavens and realms." Then the momentum didn't decrease, and it directly fell towards the young man on the spot. As if sensing that Yi Shiwen had broken in, a few young men and women suddenly flew over from afar and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. When facing Yi Shiwen, even though they were all divine kings, they didn't pay any attention to him, as if they were looking at an ant. These princes of the Tian clan were really like what was recorded in the ancient books, very arrogant and conceited. "Human, I think you have really lost your mind." The young man looked at Yi Shiwen coldly, as if he was looking at a madman. "Why, human, are the dignified princes of the Tian clan not enough to be your master?" The young man said with a cold smile. "What did you say?" The young man's eyes suddenly widened, as if he had heard wrongly. He didn't expect Yi Shiwen to dare to say such words. And the status of the Tian clan dynasty was equivalent to the inheritance of the emperor in the world. Naturally, these princes of the Tian clan dynasty should be similar to the elders and elite disciples of the emperor's inheritance, which was equivalent to Ji Renwang's status in the martial sect. Tian clan dynasty? Yi Shiwen immediately understood. These people should be the experts of the Tian clan who ran out from the other side of the seal. No wonder there were so many experts. In particular, it happened to poke the most painful part in their hearts, which was that they had been exiled twice in a row. This was simply a great shame and humiliation. They were dignified Tian clan, the natural masters of the world, but they were actually exiled twice by slaves. Was there any bigger joke than this? If this palm strike landed, even a god king would die a horrible death. If the allied forces that were chasing them were lowly ants, then what were they who were being chased considered? Vaguely, there was actually the martial arts of the Tianqi dynasty. Moreover, with the reputation of the Tian clan for so many years, after seeing that things were not going well, the other party should have immediately knelt down. Even if they met someone with backbone, they should have turned around and fled on the spot. Who knew that Yi Shiwen actually didn't have the slightest intention of escaping and actually dared to laugh at them? Even a king-ranked expert had to be sent to guard it, but they were still seriously injured and died. One could imagine how dangerous the God's Tomb here was. Different from the remnants of the Tian clan. After being suppressed by the allied forces for countless years, the remnants of the Tian clan had completely restrained the arrogance in their hearts. However, they probably never expected that this human was thinking of how to capture all of them and torture them for the information he wanted. Otherwise, they would have completely fallen out with him. "Take me as a slave? How dare you?" Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. Chapter 28:01. This strike was invincible, and its momentum did not diminish as it headed straight for the young man's head. The young man wanted to struggle, but he was surprised to find that he was actually intimidated by the sword momentum. He could not move at all. This was simply impossible. For a person's aura to intimidate another person, it was only possible if the other person's cultivation was much higher than his. He was a dignified divine king, but he was actually intimidated by the aura of another divine king. This was simply a fantasy. It was simply impossible. Even if it was going to happen, it could only be reversed. His aura made it impossible for the other party to dodge. This was the most reasonable explanation. This sword momentum, Dominator's sword intent. Could it be that you are someone from the Dominator dynasty? Suddenly, the young man could not help but exclaim in horror. He immediately revealed the origin of this sword intent. For these princes, although they could not say that they knew the martial arts of the other dynasties like the back of their hands, they were still very clear about the Dominator's sword intent left behind by the Dominator emperors. In other words, it was not too difficult to say. However, even if he reacted, it was useless. Yi Shiwen's sword still fell instantly. Puchi, his fleshly body, was easily torn in half like a piece of paper. Then, it exploded into a mist of blood that filled the sky. Just a single strike was enough to slay a god king alive. One sword. It was just one sword. All the princes and princesses of the celestial clans were completely dumbfounded. They had never expected such a situation to happen. This young man was considered very strong among them. Otherwise, he would not have become their leader. In the end, he was easily killed by Yi Shiwen just like that. Dominator's sword intent. The words that the young man left behind were still reverberating in their minds. How could a human learn the supreme martial arts of their celestial clans? Even in the Dominator dynasty, only a small number of people could learn the Dominator's sword intent, let alone the other races. It was simply rare to find someone who could cultivate to this level. This was the first time they had seen such a terrifying sword intent in their lives. Most importantly, in order to prevent their martial arts from being leaked to the outside world, these dynasties would leave a restriction in the minds of their successors. If anyone tried to search their memories or force them to speak, the restriction would immediately be activated and the person would instantly explode into pieces, causing them to die a miserable death. Although it was very cruel, it was an indispensable method for these dynasties. Otherwise, with so many descendants, these martial arts would be spread all over the world. Therefore, even after so many years, many of the things contained in these sword techniques, including some of the sword principles involved in the sword intent, had long been analyzed by others. However, the complete sword techniques had never been circulated, and it was impossible for others to learn them. This was their greatest trump card. Outsiders were not very clear about this. Only the imperial princes like them knew it the best because they had the same restriction on their bodies. These restrictions would explode them into pieces at the crucial moment. Although it was very cruel, it was a very good method. Very few people would try to explore these imperial martial arts because it was useless. Every prince who had inherited a martial art would have such a restriction. They were already used to it. At this time, seeing Yi Shiwen use the authentic Dominator's sword intent, they were shocked and panicked. Could it be that the remnants of the celestial clans had spread this martial art? This was the only possibility they could think of. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, how could a human divine king master this martial art? It was simply impossible. However, they clearly did not know that the man in front of them did not rely on torture to obtain this martial art. Just by exchanging blows, he had unexpectedly grasped a bit of the Dominator's sword intent, and then relied on this Dominator's sword intent to deduce the complete Dominator's sword intent. This was simply beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even experienced and knowledgeable divine kings like them were incomparably terrified. Obviously, Yi Shiwen had no intention of telling them. Just like how the celestial princes regarded him as an ant, he did not care about these princes at all. Other than the use of asking for information, there was no other use at all. Not to mention that both sides were now in a state of irreconcilable enmity. The celestial clans wanted to cause chaos in the world, and a top expert like him was the first to bear the brunt. Now was the right time to take advantage of this good opportunity to capture all the imperial princes of the celestial clans in one fell swoop. These were the most elite members of the celestial clans. If all of them died here, perhaps the celestial clans would be hopping mad. Prince Xiaoyang. Those people exclaimed one after another. This was obviously the name of the person who had been killed by Yi Shiwen. Although their relationship was not very good, in general it was still all right. Moreover, watching this person being killed in front of them made them feel even more sympathetic. They were so angry that they were trembling all over. Their blood was boiling and burning. You actually killed Prince Xiaoyang. You're dead. You're too audacious. You've offended the Tianqi dynasty. No, you've offended our celestial clan. There's no way for you to live in this world. This time, you must die. A woman trembled with anger. Her voice was extremely mournful. As a dignified imperial princess, her status in the imperial dynasty was not much lower than those princes. She was even an outstanding figure. Ordinary princes did not have a status as high as hers. Right now, she was actually frightened by a lowly ant. This was a complete humiliation. Go kill him. Let him know the dignity of our celestial clan. At this moment, a young man shouted. He had already seen how ferocious Yi Shiwen was, especially the sword strike just now. It was simply not like that of an ordinary person. He could actually kill a divine king with a single strike. He did not even think too much about it. He only instinctively felt extreme danger. How could he still dare to go up alone? Naturally, he called the others to attack Yi Shiwen together. "All of you, die for me!" Yi Shiwen roared. His entire body spewed out a strong sword intention, and then formed an incomparably huge sword character. It took the form of an ancient character, and it seemed as if a sword emperor had been reborn. Then it shot towards the princes and princesses of these dynasties. Bang! 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 These princes and princes screamed as they were blasted into pieces. It was a tragic sight. They only had enough time to let out a miserable scream. They reassembled their bodies in the distance with difficulty. Then they looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. When they joined forces, even a peak divine king would die with a grudge. At this moment, they could not do anything to this young man in front of them. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. Then he said, "How about it? Have you thought it through? I didn't kill you just now not because I couldn't kill you. I just wanted to give you a chance to redeem yourselves. Tell me the situation of the sealed land. Tell me everything you know. This way, I can even give you a chance to be my slave. You actually want us to redeem ourselves by doing meritorious deeds." A celestial prince roared. His face and ears were flushed. He was so angry that he was alive. It had always been them who let others redeem themselves by doing meritorious deeds. Since when did they have such a day when someone said such words to them? What's more, even if they said it, it was only to be a slave. It was simply too much. He only felt that this human in front of him was simply too rampant. Obviously, he had completely forgotten how arrogant they were when they asked Yi Shiwen to kneel down and be their slave. For them, it was normal. If others treated them like this, it would be a heinous crime. "I will give you 3 seconds. If you miss it, you will die," Yi Shiwen said. His expression became indifferent. Anyway, there were still many princes and princesses inside. It was not a big deal for a few to die. On the contrary, it could deter those inside. 3, 2, 1. These princes and princesses were still in a state of extreme anger. No one had dared to be so presumptuous in front of them. There was no time to think. At this time, Yi Shiwen had already made his move. Swish! 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 The sword light formed in an instant, forming a huge word sword. Then it blasted in all directions. Those princes and princesses screamed in horror. At this time, they finally remembered the fact that Yi Shiwen had just killed their companions with one sword. Moreover, he had also severely injured them with one sword. But it was too late. Yi Shiwen had absolutely no intention of showing mercy. "Stop!" At this time, an extremely angry voice came from the depths of the array. The voice was incomparably majestic. "Great Chaos Fist." Then, an incomparably huge fist descended from the sky. It had stimulated the power of the entire Great Matrix Array. It had blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it came crashing down towards Yi Shiwen. This was an attempt to intercept Yi Shiwen's offensive and rescue him. "No one can save the people that I want to kill." Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. The sword light was still unabated and slashed down. Poochie! 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 These princes and princesses of various dynasties couldn't stop it at all. They screamed as they were slashed by the sword. This time, Yi Shiwen didn't show any mercy. It was impossible for them to resurrect. All their life imprints were directly cut off by the sword. They died instantly. At this time, the Great Chaos Fist finally arrived. Even with the help of the power of the array, it was still a step too late. At this time, it seemed to be angry out of shame. It directly fell towards Yi Shiwen's head. Yi Shiwen didn't move. There was no expression on his face. He looked at the Great Chaos Fist falling directly on top of his head. Chapter 28:02. Bang! Yi Shiwen raised his hand and created a divine light that filled the sky, blocking this attack. The collision between the two sides even caused the entire sky to completely explode, and the energy exploded on the spot. However, it did not pose any threat to Yi Shiwen. He saw a young man dressed in a royal robe looking at Yi Shiwen with an arrogant expression. His expression was calm as he swept his eyes over Yi Shiwen and said, How dare you ignore my words? Who do you think you are? Yi Shiwen raised his eyes and glanced at the young man. He could see that the strength of this young man was much stronger than the princes and princesses from before. The young man was a little surprised. Yi Shiwen did not follow the rhythm he had set and did not follow his routine at all. Yi Shiwen did not answer his question at all, and on the contrary, he took a different path. Human, from the moment you say this, it will be the moment of your death. The young man looked at him coldly. If I want to kill someone, no one can save you even if you escape to the heavens or the earth. You look like you have some status. You should not be an ordinary prince or princess. State your name. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. I am the crown prince of the Central Dynasty. I'll let you know my name so that you will not die without knowing who killed you. The young man said coldly. His expression was very indifferent. What he said was the truth, and not a lie. The crown prince of the Central Dynasty. Very good, a little interesting. I just killed someone called the Central Heavenly King. He should also be considered a member of the Central Dynasty. It will be perfect if I kill another crown prince of the Central Dynasty, Yi Shiwen said with a grin. The Central Prince looked at him coldly and said, Human, are you trying to completely anger me? Do you know what kind of sin it is to completely anger me? Idiot! Yi Shiwen spat out these two words and continued. Could it be that the best education of the celestial race has produced an idiot like you? How dare you? The veins on the Central Prince's face suddenly bulged, and he was clearly angered by Yi Shiwen. Central Prince, you are so arrogant, but now you are being insulted, and yet you are not doing anything. What a joke! At this time, there was another flash of light. A young man wearing a Tao diagram walked out. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw the pattern on his clothes, because he had seen this pattern before. It was the pattern of the Myriad Worlds diagram. He had once fought with the artifact spirit of the Myriad Worlds diagram. He would never forget this pattern. The identity of this young man was obvious. He was the crown prince of the Myriad Worlds dynasty. What a coincidence! They were all descendants of old friends whom he had fought with before. Crown Prince of the Myriad Realms, you are not allowed to interfere in my affairs, the Central Crown Prince said coldly. This time, with our empires working together, I'll definitely find Emperor Qin's primordial spirit avatar before you. When I devour it, I'll definitely be one step ahead of you. Emperor Qin's primordial spirit avatar. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly became sharp. Sure enough, they had come for the Qin Emperor. With their status and strength, ordinary items wouldn't be able to attract them, so this was the only way. Central Crown Prince, you are too confident. When the time comes, it's not certain who will be able to seize the Qin Emperor's primordial spirit avatar. The Crown Prince sneered. This time, the empires had joined forces. If it wasn't for the Qin Emperor's primordial spirit avatar, they would not have joined forces. Although they were all from the celestial races, they belonged to different empires and were usually in a competitive relationship. It was impossible for them to cooperate with each other. Even if they cooperated now, they would be on guard against each other. It was impossible for them to be completely confident. The outside world did not expect such a genius like the Qin Emperor to appear. Even our celestial race did not gain a new emperor after the Second War. But the Qin Emperor was able to break through the shackles of heaven and earth and achieve this. He is indeed extraordinary. The Crown Prince of the Central Region sighed. Although they were enemies, a person of that level wasn't someone they could slander. What's the use of that? Everything he left behind is now ours. The Crown Prince laughed loudly. Hurry up and get rid of this human. Otherwise, don't say that I didn't wait for you. The Central Crown Prince said coldly. You don't need to remind me of this. I naturally understand. You guys are very confident. Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said, What Crown Prince? Your status should be much higher than those princes and princesses. Who was the one who said that he wanted to take me as a slave? The Crown Prince was a little angry when he saw that Yi Shiwen dared to refute him. However, he immediately said, It was the Sovereign Crown Prince who wanted to take you as a slave. He said that he sensed the aura of his own kind from you. It seems like you learned the ruler's sword intent. You're lucky. But now that you've offended me, It's useless even if the sovereign crown prince wants to spare your life. Yes, that's right. You've completely lost your chance. The central crown prince said coldly. Let me deal with you first. The central crown prince sneered. His big hand suddenly moved, and rays of light flew out in an instant. Then, they formed a layer of golden clouds and instantly bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. A pure golden kingdom appeared everywhere, as if it was cast out of gold. In Yi Shiwen's hand, the ruler's sword intent erupted and swept out. It pierced through the sky and directly cut the golden kingdom in half. The central crown prince's attack was instantly broken. As Yi Shiwen said this, the ruler's sword intent in his hand exploded even more, shaking space and time. In an instant, it ruthlessly attacked the central crown prince. The central crown prince was instantly enraged. With a roar, he transformed into the central emperor's body. His spiritual power skyrocketed, and his aura became unimaginably tyrannical. In this instant, he was the only overlord in the universe, invincible and unstoppable. This was the central emperor's body, the unparalleled secret art of the central dynasty. In Yi Shiwen's hands, it was far more powerful than in the hands of the central heavenly king. This was because the central heavenly king was only a peak divine king of the 10 great divine kings, but the central crown prince was different. He was an invincible quasi-emperor who had truly stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. His strength was naturally extraordinary. After the central crown prince transformed into the central emperor's body, he pounced towards Yi Shiwen even more fiercely, not giving him any chance to breathe. Bang! 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 Both sides clashed countless times in the void. In an instant, who knew how many thousands of moves had been exchanged? The naked eye could see through their movements. On the other side, the crown prince of myriad realms was completely shocked. This was because he and the central crown prince had been fighting each other for countless years. He naturally knew how powerful the central crown prince's central emperor's body was. It could be said that once it was used, one's strength would increase by a large margin in an instant. Even he couldn't gain the upper hand against the central crown prince after he used the central emperor's body. In fact, he might even be suppressed. Even so, the central crown prince still couldn't suppress this human. It was as if the central emperor's body's increase in strength was insignificant to him. Not good. He could clearly see that the central crown prince was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. To him, this was simply unbelievable. It should be said that once the central crown prince used the central emperor's body, even if he couldn't defeat his opponent, he could at least protect himself. He was already in an invincible position. Therefore, he had a headache fighting the central crown prince several times. He had to think of a way to fight against the central crown prince. But now, the central crown prince was actually starting to show an obvious disadvantage. In every collision, the central crown prince didn't gain the upper hand at all. Instead, he gradually began to struggle and kept retreating. Although this was a very small margin, it couldn't be hidden from him. His eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? You should know that this is the central crown prince, not some random cat or dog on the side of the road. He looked at Yi Shiwen in astonishment. This human divine king was actually able to suppress the central crown prince who used the central emperor's body with the body of an ordinary divine king. If such a person was allowed to grow, it would simply be a disaster. Could it be that the human race was really going to have a new emperor lord? His eyes flashed with ferocity as he thought of this. I can't let him continue to grow. Although he didn't get along with the central crown prince, and they were usually competitors, he also understood that all of his power and wealth was built on the fact that the celestial race was invincible. If someone from the human race became an emperor lord, then the great situation they were currently in would be ruined in a matter of minutes. He didn't want to return to the place where he was exiled. Although that place had been built by countless ancestors of the celestial race and had become habitable, it was only habitable. How could it be compared to the fertile land of the myriad heavens and myriad realms? His cultivation power rose in an instant, and he was about to join the battle. Suddenly, a miserable shriek rang out. The crown prince shot backwards like a comet, smashing heavily into the formation. The terrifying force even caused the formation formed from the 99 supreme quality god artifacts to shake, almost shattering. This is the moment. The Myriad Realms Crown Prince roared as a picture of the Myriad Realms chart appeared around him. Then, with lightning speed, it shot towards Yishiwen. Chapter 2803. The Myriad Realms Crown Prince's attack instantly blasted towards Yishiwen. This was a martial art passed down from their ancestors, and it used the Myriad Realms diagram as its foundation. In other words, the Myriad Realms diagram itself was refined for this purpose. Just in time. Let's kill him together. Yishiwen sneered coldly. He did not panic. With such a quasi-emperor beside him, even if he was careless, he would still keep a close eye on him. Yishiwen waved his hand, which turned into a sky-flipping seal and smashed down on the spot. Boom! The Myriad Worlds diagram and the sky-flipping seal collided directly. This shocking collision produced an endless shockwave that spread out in all directions. Thump, thump, thump. At this time, the Crown Prince of the Myriad Realms actually retreated several steps. It was only now that he finally understood why the Central Crown Prince was at a complete disadvantage against this human. The human in front of him could not be judged by normal standards. An ordinary divine king, even if it was their own divine king, would not be his match at all. He could take them down in one move, even if it was an expert of the so-called 10 Great Divine King level. To them, it would only be slightly troublesome. As a crown prince who had stepped into the quasi-emperor realm, he had this confidence. However, when facing Yishiwen, this law was completely useless. This divine king could actually fight a quasi-emperor, and not only was he not at a disadvantage, he even had the upper hand. He was simply a monster. The crown prince was going crazy. In a pure competition of strength, he, a dignified quasi-emperor, was actually at a complete disadvantage. He was not a match for Yishiwen. Interesting. Yishiwen laughed heartily, and once again rushed up to kill. A sword swept through the sky, and the terrifying sword light pierced through the entire world. Then it tore a huge crack in the world that was enveloped by the formation, and directly crashed down. Boom! The Myriad Worlds diagram flew out from the top of the Crown Prince's head and directly collided with the ruler's sword intent. Boom! It was an even more shocking collision. This time, the Crown Prince of the Myriad Realms felt that his legs could not hold on any longer, and it was possible that he would kneel down. Impossible. How could this be? The Crown Prince of the Myriad Realms was furious. He had never suffered such a big loss before, and now he had suffered such a big loss because of Yishiwen. Why is it impossible? There's always a higher mountain, and there's always a higher mountain. You don't even understand this principle? What a joke. Yishiwen shouted and attacked. The Celestials had long been immersed in the glory of the past and could not extricate themselves. Their history and glory were indeed enough to make them proud, but the past was the past, and they didn't understand this truth. They could not accept that a mortal was actually stronger than them. Let's go together and kill him. The Central Crown Prince had already returned to the battlefield. The huge wound on his body was rapidly healing. He had been struck by Yishiwen's sword during the fight just now, and his entire body had almost been split in half. If he was prince and Yi down, he would have been the divine king to God. The Central Crown Prince was furious. The Central Emperor's body on his body completely erupted. It was incomparably ferocious. He took the lead and charged towards Yishiwen. Above his head, the word Central appeared. This was the center of the universe, and also the most powerful force in the universe. They had cut it off and taken out the word Central. This was the supreme Great Tao that the Central Emperor had comprehended. The Central Emperor had used this to become one of the strongest emperors of the celestial race. At this time, the power in the hands of the Central Emperor was not small. Interesting. Yishiwen laughed and was not afraid. In today's chaotic world, the best way for him to improve his strength was to fight with these top experts. There were not many opportunities like this. 6 paths of reincarnation suppressed the world. Yishiwen roared, and the 6 paths of reincarnation fist blasted out. This time, he used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, and the 6 paths of reincarnation came crashing down. Boom! The 6 paths of reincarnation and the word central collided. This was a collision that involved the origin of the universe. When the two collided, the entire universe trembled and roared. The resulting violent energy hurricane bombarded in all directions, and the entire formation began to shake violently. Eat my attack! The Crown Prince came crashing down on the myriad worlds diagram. Dominate the world! Yi Shiwen slashed down with the sword in his left hand, colliding with the Crown Prince's myriad worlds diagram. Rumble! A series of explosions occurred. Yi Shiwen's ruler sword will easily block the Crown Prince's myriad worlds diagram. At this time, the central Crown Prince's astonishing attack broke out again. Boom! 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 In an instant, the entire universe was left with a shocking collision between them. Facing the surprise attack of the two Crown Princes and Quasi-Emperors, Yi Shiwen was actually able to fight against them alone. Whether it was the central Crown Prince or the Crown Prince, they no longer looked down on Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, there was complete shock and disbelief in their eyes. Not only was he not a match for Yi Shiwen in a one-on-one fight, but he was also unable to gain the upper hand even in a two-on-one fight. How was this possible? Either one of their attacks was enough to make all Quasi-Emperors tremble in fear. But when Yi Shiwen faced their attacks, he was able to easily defeat them. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist and ruler sword had reached their peak in their hands. Sometimes they could lift something heavy as if it were light. Sometimes they could lift something light as if it were heavy. Sometimes they could launch a crazy surprise attack like a storm. And sometimes they could resolve their attacks without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. These two situations that should not have appeared at the same time had appeared in Yi Shiwen's hands. His attacks were like a storm, and there was not the slightest trace of smoke or fire. What was even more terrifying was his astonishing power. Every time he attacked, the sky seemed to collapse. When the attacks landed on their bodies, they were shocked. Gradually, they found that their bodies seemed to be a little numb and stiff. Opposite them, Yi Shiwen did not seem to feel anything. His attacks did not have the slightest hint of disorder, and they continued to attack. Bang! The central Crown Prince was the first to be unable to bear it. He was once again hit in the face by Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist. His entire body flew out and fell into the divine tomb. He had injuries on his body that had not yet recovered. In the battle between the two, Yi Shiwen was completely focused on him, trying to find a breakthrough from him. Sure enough, after the two had exchanged countless blows, the central Crown Prince gradually became more and more disadvantaged. Finally, a fatal flaw appeared, and he was hit by Yi Shiwen's punch. His central Emperor body also completely collapsed in the void, turning into a sky full of energy waves that spread in all directions. On the other side, without the central Crown Prince to restrain Yi Shiwen, the Myriad Realm Crown Prince began to fall into a disadvantageous position. He was not Yi Shiwen's match at all. After a few rounds, he was already flustered. In particular, Yi Shiwen's sovereign sword intent and 6 paths of reincarnation fist made him even more depressed. He had never met such an opponent before. For ordinary people, being able to cultivate the sovereign sword intent or the 6 paths of reincarnation fist was already something to be proud of. It could be said that they were extremely lucky. However, Yi Shiwen had actually cultivated 2 completely different kinds of martial arts to the pinnacle of perfection. All of his attacks were at his fingertips, and there was not the slightest bit of difficulty in them. Such a shocking scene was something he had never seen in his life. Among the people he had seen in the past, no one in his generation could compete with him. Bang! The Myriad Realm Crown Prince finally could not resist anymore. His entire body was blasted thousands of miles away by Yi Shiwen. If he had not used the Myriad Realm diagram at the critical moment to block the attack, he was afraid that he would not be much better off than the central Crown Prince. Sovereign Crown Prince, are you going to watch the two of us get killed? This human is cruel and merciless. If we die, you won't be any better off. The myriad realm crown prince roared and headed towards the depths of the formation. Humph! A cold snort came from the depths of the formation. Then, a shocking sword intent blasted through everything and directly slashed towards Yi Shiwen. It was the sovereign sword intent. Pure sovereign sword intent. Bang! Yi Shiwen did not dodge or evade. He took a step forward and then blasted out a punch. Unexpectedly, the sword intention was dispersed on the spot, and then the sword intention was absorbed by his fist. It was also the sovereign sword intent, and it was almost of the same origin. After Yi Shiwen absorbed it, he felt that he had gained something else. It was different from the sovereign sword intent that Yi Shiwen had derived on his own. This was the purest sovereign sword intent that had been imparted to him. Human, I don't know how you obtained our sovereign sword intent, but you have already rejected the olive branch that I extended just now. This means that you have chosen death. A cold voice came from the depths of the formation. Then a figure slowly emerged. Another middle-aged man in an imperial robe stepped out. It was the Crown Prince Dominator. He looked more mature than the Crown Prince of the Myriad Realms and the Central Crown Prince. He also seemed to be more dangerous. He had the aura of a ruler who ruled the world and ruled over the Myriad Realms. Yi Shiwen could not be more familiar with this aura. This was the aura that would be produced when the sovereign sword intent was cultivated to an extremely high level. Chapter 2804. This was something that would only happen when the Sovereign Lord's sword intent had a profound influence. Yi Shiwen, on the other hand, was different. He was controlling the Sovereign Lord's sword intent instead of letting it affect him. This was his most unique martial path. Crown Prince Dominator, don't waste your breath on him. This guy must be a peerless genius of the human race. If we don't kill him, he'll be a huge threat to the entire celestial race in the future. The Central Crown Prince shouted from afar. After being severely injured by Yi Shiwen in succession, the Central Crown Prince felt even more depressed. Clang! Before he finished speaking, the Crown Prince Dominator made his move. A 10,000 feet long sword light shot out, piercing through everything and smashing everything in its path. In an instant, it had already penetrated Yi Shiwen's face. This attack was tyrannical to the extreme. The Sovereign Lord's sword intent completely erupted at this moment. Clang! Just as the sword was about to pierce through Yi Shiwen finally made his move. The sword light rushed out on the spot, forming the word sword above his head, and then slashed downwards. Boom! It was as if two incomparably huge beams of light had collided. No one could imagine how terrifying it would be when these two sword lights collided. Wallalala! The entire formation was like a thin piece of paper. In the aftermath of the terrifying sword-light collision, it constantly swept and trembled. The Crown Prince Dominator's cultivation in the Sovereign Lord's sword intent far exceeded that of anyone Yi Shiwen had seen before. He had a more detailed inheritance, and he had directly cultivated this Sovereign Lord's sword technique to an astonishing level. Whoosh! In this frenzied aftermath, a sword light followed closely, breaking through the chaos and slashing towards Yi Shiwen. He wanted to seize the initiative and use continuous attacks to defeat Yi Shiwen. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted softly. Seeing the sword light pouncing towards him, he didn't hesitate at all. His right hand instantly transformed into the sky-flipping seal, and he smashed it down fiercely. Hong long long long! A series of shocking explosions rang out. The martial path laws of both sides manifested, strangling each other and annihilating everything. Don't even think about seizing the initiative. Yi Shiwen immediately saw through the opponent's plan. At his level, he could see many things at a glance. Therefore, he immediately threw a punch. The Six Paths roulette was formed instantly and swept towards the Crown Prince Sovereign as if it was tearing through the sky. Behind the Crown Prince Sovereign, the projection of a powerful Sovereign Emperor instantly appeared. The moment it appeared, it blocked Yi Shiwen's attack with indomitable might. Yi Shiwen immediately discovered that compared to the other two, the Crown Prince Dominator was slightly stronger. His cultivation was probably close to the intermediate stage of the Quasi-Emperor realm and had reached the peak of the initial stage of the Quasi-Emperor realm. The Sovereign Emperor's avatar blocked Yi Shiwen's attack as soon as it appeared. Then it turned around and suppressed Yi Shiwen. The sword radiance traversed the sky like a rainbow bridge floating in the universe, spanning thousands of miles. Not to be outdone, Yi Shiwen also released his Sovereign and Emperor incarnation and clashed with his opponent on the spot. The two Sovereign Emperors seemed to have been resurrected from a distant era, walking out of the river of time and reviving in the present. Moreover, it wasn't just one but two. Such a shocking collision scene was almost unimaginable. The Crown Prince Sovereign, in particular, was a little stunned. He only knew that Yi Shiwen had cultivated the ruler's sword technique. Although he didn't know where Yi Shiwen had obtained this technique, there was no way Yi Shiwen could be more orthodox than someone like him, who had personally received pointers from a sovereign emperor. Even if Yi Shiwen had obtained it from the sovereign dynasty outside, it would be useless. After all, the sovereign dynasty was only a branch family. Compared to the cultivation techniques in their hands, it could not be more comprehensive. However, he never would have imagined that he would actually be able to manifest the illusory images of hegemons and emperors. This wasn't something that could be described as stolen. Impossible. How can you condense the projection of a sovereign and emperor? The Crown Prince Sovereign exclaimed in shock. He couldn't believe it. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and didn't say anything else. However, the projection of a sovereign and emperor that he had condensed continued to solidify. Gradually, the aura emitted from his body surpassed that of the Crown Prince Sovereign. Bang! 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 In the universe, the shocking battle was still ongoing. However, the sovereign and emperor that the Crown Prince Sovereign had condensed was being beaten back. He was no match for Yi Shiwen at all. What a powerful force! The Crown Prince of Central took advantage of this opportunity to heal his injuries. However, he had been paying attention to the battle over there. In the end, he was also being beaten back by Yi Shiwen's tyrannical sovereign sword intent cultivation. Am I seeing things? The Crown Prince Sovereign has actually been defeated in the sovereign sword technique. The Crown Prince of Myriad Realms was also in complete disbelief. What a joke! It wasn't the first time they had fought with the Crown Prince Sovereign. They had basically never gained any advantage. In fact, they were basically in a disadvantageous state. Of the three Crown Princes, the Crown Prince Hegemon was indeed stronger than them. He had even received guidance from hegemons and emperors in his early years. Although they were all born of dynasties, there was a considerable gap between them and the all-powerful ancestor of the Crown Prince Hegemon. They had personally experienced Yi Shiwen's tyrannical strength. However, they hadn't expected Yi Shiwen to be able to defeat the Crown Prince Sovereign. Furthermore, it was in the sovereign sword technique. An earth-shattering explosion spread out with the two of them as the epicenter. Countless cracks appeared, and in an instant, even the formation had a loophole. Even the 99 top-grade divine artifacts couldn't cover this scene. Ah! Then, there was another blood-curdling scream. The Crown Prince of Sovereigns was sent flying on the spot. A large sword appeared in his chest and pierced through his entire body. He had nearly been killed. The large sword in his chest turned into a sky full of light and disappeared without a trace. Then a shocking, huge, bloody hole appeared. The Crown Prince Sovereign had suffered a great loss in the battle. The Sovereign and Emperor that Yi Shiwen had condensed had pierced through his body. He was instantly severely injured. How could this be? At this time, the Crown Prince of Myriad Realms and the Crown Prince of Central could no longer care about healing their injuries. If the Crown Prince Sovereign was killed, the two of them would definitely not be Yi Shiwen's match. With a loud roar, they pounced forward to kill. The Central Crown Prince's Central Emperor body and the Myriad Realms diagram that the Crown Prince of Myriad Realms had transformed landed on Yi Shiwen's body almost at the same time. They didn't give Yi Shiwen a chance to attack further. How could Yi Shiwen give them this chance? The demon wings behind him spread out directly. Like the wings of the sky, it froze heaven and earth on the spot. The attacks of the Central Crown Prince and the Crown Prince of Myriad Realms were directly blocked. It was impossible for them to even affect Yi Shiwen. Overturning the sky seal, overturning the ocean seal, shaking the mountain seal, 3 seals in one. Yi Shiwen roared. The overturning the sky seal, overturning the ocean seal, and shaking the mountain seal were constantly changing. They directly fused together on the spot and fell down. Hong long long long. A huge mushroom cloud swept up on the spot. This terrifying attack directly annihilated everything. No life could survive in it. How is this possible? The Crown Prince of Sovereigns has been killed. How dare you kill the Crown Prince of Sovereigns? The Crown Prince of Myriad Realms was trembling all over. He didn't know whether he was scared or angry. He knew very well how terrifying the Sovereign Dynasty was. Therefore, although he had thoughts of competing with the Crown Prince for supremacy, he had never thought of killing him. What a joke! If he really did that, he wouldn't even be able to do it. The next day, the two dynasties would most likely start an internal strife, and that would be the start of a civil war. In this world, no one can save you anymore. You will face countless vengeance and relentless pursuit. The Central Crown Prince's lips were trembling. At this moment, he really felt a kind of extreme fear. In the past, they controlled the life and death of others. At this moment, their life and death were actually controlled by someone else. How could they not be scared? Although they had transcended life and death, they were still completely terrified when it came to deciding life and death. Yes, it is indeed a bit troublesome. Therefore, I will kill all of you. Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed fiercely. What the two crown princes said was indeed troublesome. Even if he was confident that he could escape from the crazy revenge of the Sky Race, he couldn't escape from the Hidden Valley. Not only could he not escape, but more importantly, the Hidden Alliance that he had painstakingly established would probably collapse at any moment. Therefore, the best way was to kill all of them and silence them. When that time came, he would have the time robe to conceal the heavenly secrets. Even an Emperor Lord would not be able to predict anything if he was one step ahead. You? How dare you? The Central Crown Prince didn't expect that his words not only didn't make Yi Shiwen cower in fear, but instead aroused his killing intent. If it were him, he might have made the same choice. However, the person who was going to be killed was him, so the situation was completely different. Kill him. Fight him to the death. The Central Crown Prince was furious and roared on the spot. The entire universe trembled under his roar, constantly shaking. In the sky, the 99 top-grade artifacts also responded to his call. They formed an incomparably huge array and bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. These 99 top-grade artifacts seemed to be burning themselves as they charged towards Yi Shiwen. They didn't care even if they had to sacrifice themselves to kill 1,000 enemies. Top-grade artifacts? Just nice. I can use them to equip the Demon Kings in the Demon Flag. Yi Shiwen wasn't shocked. Chapter 2805. These 99 supreme-grade divine artifacts were also a huge fortune. Even with Yi Shiwen's current status, he could not take out 99 supreme-grade divine artifacts. Even the entire Secret Alliance did not have that many God Kings. Yi Shiwen decided in an instant that he would use these artifacts to equip the Demon Clan army in his Demon Flag. This was because this army was completely under his control. Unlike the Hidden Alliance, there were many people in the Hidden Alliance who had different ambitions. Even in the Hidden Valley, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to say that everyone would respect him. In a short period of time, these 99 top-quality divine artifacts could not appear in the world. Otherwise, once the Tian clan discovered them, they would truly face endless pursuit. Although it was the general trend to fight against the Heavenly Clan now, he definitely didn't want to attract the attention of the Heavenly Clan before he and the entire Hidden Alliance had fully developed. Only the heavens and realms could fight against the Heavenly Clan. How could he really fight against the incomparably powerful Heavenly Clan with his strength alone? Not to mention the incomparably powerful Emperor Lords of the Heavenly Clan. Even a few random old antiques would be enough to make Yi Shiwen suffer in his current situation. He had to seize time and take advantage of the beginning of this chaotic world to completely develop himself. In the future, he would soar into the sky and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat thinking of this. He didn't hesitate at all. On the spot, an astonishing light burst out from the time robe. The law of time formed a huge hand and directly grabbed out on the spot. The 99 top-grade artifacts that were rushing down didn't have the chance to explode with amazing power. They were instantly grabbed by Yi Shiwen using the power of time. Without an owner, the 99 top-grade artifacts couldn't explode with their true power at all. They were instantly grabbed by Yi Shiwen. Roar! 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 The moment the artifact spirits in these top-grade artifacts were captured, they automatically recovered. Most of them had owners, but they were just borrowed by these princes and princesses. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? In an instant, all of them exploded. However, these exploded just in time. It was exactly what Yi Shiwen wanted. Immediately, countless time hands appeared, directly grabbed the artifact spirits in their hands, and crushed them. Without these tool spirits wreaking havoc, the remaining top-grade divine tools couldn't resist Yi Shiwen's suppression even if they had some spirituality. They were easily suppressed. The Crown Prince of Central was completely dumbfounded. How was this possible? He thought that even if the best quality divine tool couldn't fight against Yi Shiwen, it could at least buy him enough time. Who would have thought that it would be suppressed in an instant? Of course, this had a lot to do with the fact that there was no master presiding over it. But even so, Yi Shiwen's terror had far exceeded his expectations. A Dao artifact? This is the aura of a Dao artifact. You actually have a Dao artifact on you. The myriad world crown prince immediately reacted. That terrifying aura just now was clearly the aura of a Dao treasure. This was definitely not wrong. Ordinary Tian clan might not be able to recognize the aura of a Dao artifact, but existences of their level, how could they not know anything about Dao artifacts? Although every single Dao artifact was different, the essence contained within them was completely the same. Thus, it was very easy to distinguish them. If they had known that Yi Shiwen possessed a Dao tool, then they wouldn't have fought with Yi Shiwen. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? What a joke! Such a terrifying existence also possessed a Dao tool. How terrifying was that? When the myriad world crown prince heard this, he was also terrified. There weren't many Dao tools in the world. Although the younger generation had also stepped into the quasi-emperor realm, it was absolutely impossible for them to lay their hands on a Dao tool. No wonder this human was completely fearless from the beginning. With a Dao tool, he was indeed not someone they could fight against. What they didn't know was that Yi Shiwen also consumed a lot of Emperor Source to activate the Time Robe. In a situation where he couldn't condense Emperor Source, he wouldn't use the Time Robe if he didn't have to. As his final trump card, he could save a lot of resources. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would have used the Time Robe to suppress them all. Roar! 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 Loud roars came from the deity's tomb. In the sky, the roars of countless undead creatures could be heard. Cracks began to appear on the formation. Originally, the formation could be said to be as stable as Mount Tai with the suppression of the 99 best quality divine tools. The reanimated gods and evil creatures couldn't escape at all. But now that Yi Shiwen had absorbed the 99 best quality divine tools, it naturally couldn't suppress them anymore. The entire formation shook violently. The entire universe was like boiling water. A terrifying aura was boiling within it. Now, go! The Central Crown Prince roared and fled into the distance. Although the myriad world Crown Prince didn't say anything, his speed wasn't slow either. He fled on the spot. Want to leave? All of you, stay here. Yi Shiwen sneered. His ruler's sword intent condensed above his head. After absorbing the Crown Prince's ruler's sword intent, Yi Shiwen's ruler's sword intent had grown a bit stronger. Then it split into two huge sword lights that slashed down like a mountain range. Poochie! Poochies! The two screamed as they were cut in half on the spot. Their entire bodies turned into a cloud of blood mist. This cloud of blood mist actually wanted to escape into the distance. The princes and princesses of the celestial race and the undead creatures didn't even have the time to scream before they died tragically. Their bodies turned into a mass of blood mist and exploded on the spot. They were completely annihilated by a single punch. For Yi Shiwen, both sides were scourges. No matter which side it was a target to be annihilated. Naturally, he killed all of them regardless of who they were. However, this attack also consumed more than 10,000 Emperor Source. It could be said that the consumption was huge. It made him grimace in pain. However, the entire Divine Tombs area was cleared at this time. Many Divine Tombs collapsed in front of Yi Shiwen. These Divine Tombs were formed automatically by the heaven and earth. They were formed around the dead gods. Now that the corporeal bodies of those dead gods no longer existed, naturally, they could not spontaneously form the godly tombs. Half of the godly tombs that had been formed for countless years had collapsed, and the remaining half had not undergone any corpse transformation or produced any evil spirits. However, it could be seen from this that the situation of the entire group of divine tombs was very bad. It was no wonder that even the 4 great human kings had fallen in this place. There was no lack of formidable God King level corpse kings among those who had been killed by Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen's current cultivation hadn't reached a shocking level, it would have been impossible for him to kill all of them. After cleaning up, Yi Shiwen instantly unfolded his demon wings and began to fly towards the core of the divine tombs. However, he saw a figure sitting in the core area of the divine tombs. It was a vague figure, but it had a monstrous aura. Looking at it from afar, it made people feel a kind of shocking feeling. It's Emperor Qin's soul incarnation. Yi Shiwen sensed it immediately. Previously, he had also obtained a small part of Emperor Qin's energy inheritance. It directly saved him who was about to die. How could he not know? Chapter 28:06. Yi Shiwen easily judged that it should be the spirit avatar left behind by the Qin Emperor. Although this was a battlefield left behind by the Qin Emperor to suppress strong enemies in his early years, the Qin Emperor should have returned again and used the spirit avatar to suppress this place. However, at this time, the spirit avatar left behind by the Qin Emperor was only left with a massive energy. The spirit had long been erased, but the terrifying coercion of the body was still suppressing in all directions. It seemed that it was slowly erased by the corpse kings in the battlefield over the endless years. Otherwise, the 4 kings of the Desolation era wouldn't have died here. Yi Shiwen didn't know how the princes and princesses of the heavenly clans got the news and actually came to cause trouble. Yi Shiwen flew in front of the spirit avatar of the Qin Emperor, cupped his hands and said, "Senior Qin Emperor, I'm facing an urgent situation now. I have no choice but to ask for your help. I hope you don't mind." As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, the terrifying coercion around the spirit avatar of the Qin Emperor instantly dissipated completely. Yi Shiwen knew that this was recognition of his actions. The last trace of the true spirit was also erased, leaving only a mass of pure energy. This was the energy left behind by an Emperor Lord. Even the princes of the various dynasties came to look for it when they got the news, thinking that it could help them advance further. One could imagine how powerful it was. If Yi Shiwen didn't have the ability, there would definitely be a shocking war after the princes obtained this spirit avatar. But now, all of this belonged to Yi Shiwen. He was extremely excited. As long as he devoured and digested this spirit avatar of the Qin Emperor, he would advance further. Truly reaching the level of a peak divine king, this was something even more precious than the Emperor Source. There were still many Emperor Source in the various Emperor Lord's inheritances. However, under normal circumstances, the spirit avatar of an Emperor Lord would be worshipped as an ancestor. How could it be devoured by others? His return this time was really fruitful. To him, who was determined to rise in this chaotic world, this was undoubtedly the best gift. Yi Shiwen grabbed Emperor Qin's soul incarnation and put it into the time robe. Only the time robe could accommodate the soul incarnation of an Emperor Lord. Yi Shiwen didn't leave immediately after he had captured the soul of Emperor Qin. Instead, he arranged an incomparably huge array formation above the entire battlefield. He then left after he had enveloped the entire battlefield. This was also to prevent any evil spirits from coming out of the array formation and possibly wreaking havoc in the world. In this battlefield, The Yin-Chi was too strong. No one knew what would happen in the future, and it might happen in the future. Back then, when he was suppressed by the great Qin emperor, there were not so many problems. Later on, these problems occurred. Moreover, considering the level of martial strength of the nearby worlds, it was possible to cause the destruction of the world if any of the fallen gods were to undergo a corpse transformation. Yi Shiwen could almost imagine it. Therefore, he had no choice but to prepare in advance. Yi Shiwen set out to return to the Hidden Valley after completing these tasks. At this time, everyone in the Hidden Valley was still immersed in the joy of defeating a quasi-emperor for the first time and was still distributing the spoils of war on a large scale. These celestial race experts who had raided the Hidden Valley had a lot of good things on them, enough to give the entire Hidden Valley a lot of benefits. In their hearts, they were even more confident in following Yi Shiwen. The benefits were already obvious. Yi Shiwen had just returned and immediately went to find the Hidden King. The Hidden King, who had just broken through to the 10 Great King realm, was even more high-spirited at this time. Yi Shiwen didn't need to say much to properly manage the Hidden Valley. Senior Brother Hidden King, I will be entering closed-door training for a period of time. During this period, I hope that you will not disturb me as much as possible. This period of time is very important to me, said Yi Shiwen. What? Junior Brother, you're going to enter closed-door training. The Hidden King was a little unprepared after hearing the news from Yi Shiwen. The Hidden Alliance had just been established, and it was time to vigorously develop. Besides the Hidden Valley, which was the backbone of the Hidden Alliance, there was only the Bachin family. Now, the most important person in the Hidden Alliance, Yi Shiwen, was actually going to enter closed-door training. This immediately caught the Hidden King unprepared. Don't worry, Senior Brother. I'm only going to enter closed-door training. It's not a life-or-death closed-door training. If there's any trouble that you can't solve, you can still look for me. Yi Shiwen saw the Hidden King's worry and couldn't help but smile. Of course, the Hidden King also knew what Yi Shiwen was talking about. However, it wasn't a good thing for closed-door training to come out of the Middle Earth after failing. He had already made up his mind to not disturb Yi Shiwen unless it was absolutely necessary. Yi Shiwen was now the backbone of the entire Hidden Valley. The stronger he was, the more benefits the Hidden Valley would receive. Naturally, the Hidden King wouldn't object to this. All right, the Hidden King nodded and said, Senior Brother Hidden King, you don't need to belittle yourself. Although I'm going to enter closed-door training during this period of time, you're no longer the same as before. If we really fight, there aren't many people in the entire heavens who would dare to say that they can suppress you. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. The Hidden King was startled in his heart. Indeed, he didn't know when he had started to think about relying on Yi Shiwen. The entire Hidden Valley had always been relying on him. Therefore, he had always performed very strongly. Now that Yi Shiwen had become his successor, and his performance was even more outstanding than his, he had gradually lost his original lofty aspirations. Of course, it wasn't to the extent that he was completely useless. It was just that he had started to get used to relying on Yi Shiwen to solve many things. This wasn't a good habit, especially for someone like him who was once a mighty lord whose name had shaken the world. It was even more of a bad thing. With his current strength, he could be considered as a top-notch figure in the entire heavens. But if a quasi-emperor personally attacks, what should we do? The Hidden King said. He didn't have to worry about ordinary divine kings. Even if it was a surprise attack from an expert of the 10 great divine kings level, he wouldn't be worried. He was even a little eager to test how tyrannical his newly improved strength was. But if it was a surprise attack from a quasi-emperor, then the situation would be completely different. Senior Brother, are you confused? Now that the heavenly race is busy invading various places, even if a quasi-emperor comes out, they will have to face the surprise attack and counterattack of the various emperor inheritances. How would they have time to care about a small place like ours? Even if it's related, they have to think twice. After the death of the 100-eyed giant, they should know the severity of the situation. Yi Shiwen said. The Hidden King thought about it, and it was true. In front of a colossus like the heavenly race, the Hidden Valley was at best a small character. If it wasn't for Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword swallowing the Tianqi Emperor's sword, it wouldn't have attracted much attention. It was already very rare to send a heavenly race expert of the 10 great divine kings level. Now that the heavenly race had just returned, they were wreaking havoc everywhere and attacking the world. In addition to plundering resources, to a large extent, they were also destroying the deployment of the allied forces of the various races, so that they couldn't gather together. And this made their quasi-emperors even more scattered, so it was impossible for them to find trouble with the Hidden Valley. Even if there wasn't there still Yi Shiwen? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel relieved. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't say anything more. He entered the state of closed-door training. Although he wasn't around, the Hidden King alone was enough to solve those problems. It wouldn't be a problem for him to develop the Hidden Alliance to a higher level. After all, although they were recruiting a king's sect, it was just an ordinary king's sect. They didn't want to recruit emperor inheritances and enter them. With his cultivation, it was enough to control the situation. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was very relieved. Now, he was even more anxious to swallow this Emperor Lord spirit. After entering the place of closed-door training in the Hidden Valley, Yi Shiwen immediately began his closed-door training. He didn't choose to return to the Demon King's treasure house. He had enough Emperor Source on hand, so there was no need to return. Time passed in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. In the depths of the place of closed-door training, Yi Shiwen closed his eyes. His whole body was emitting golden light, like a Buddha walking in the world. Around him, countless laws appeared and even surpassed the scope of the laws that divine kings possessed. And in front of him, the Emperor Lord's spirit incarnation had become very thin, as if it could disappear at any time. In Yi Shiwen's body, magic power was beating his body like a tide, and there was a thunderous sound. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. The fierce look in his eyes turned into a sea of lightning that filled the sky and spread in all directions. In this mystic realm, all of his actions were kept secret. All of his martial arts were being deduced. After 100 years, his magic power had finally climbed to an extreme. No one could see the situation inside his body. Yi Shiwen opened his mouth and suddenly formed a huge suction force. The last bit of energy of the Sovereign Lord's primordial spirit incarnation also turned into a torrent and poured into Yi Shiwen's body, turning into a frenzy of energy and fusing into his body. And around his body, all kinds of laws were activated. At this moment, they were all active. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled everywhere. Thunder and fire intersected, as if a world was forming and being born. It looked extremely terrifying. After a long time, these strange phenomena finally calmed down. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his eyes. There was a flash of joy in his eyes. Finally, I reached the peak of the Divine King realm. In these 100 years, he actually directly rushed to the peak of the Tidal King realm. He really touched the peak of this realm, and it was impossible for him to go any higher. If he went any higher, it would be the Quasi-Emperor realm. It was just like ordinary people who cultivated to the level of the 10 great divine kings. His current realm had already reached that level, but his strength had long been extraordinary. Chapter 2807. Many experts who were thought to have fallen or had disappeared for many years without any news came out one after another. They joined forces in the face of the righteous cause of fighting against the heavenly race. It could be said that they were on the same level as the heavenly race. Under the invasion of the heavenly race, many experts who had been cultivating in seclusion in various places came out one after another. For a time, there were as many experts and fierce generals as there were clouds in the sky. After a few indulgences, the heavenly race was no longer something that they could deal with. However, not a single Emperor Lord responded to their call this time. This result made everyone feel afraid and suffocated. For a time, everyone came in the direction of the Hidden Valley. Whether they were curious about Yi Shiwen or dissatisfied with him, they all came. After Yi Shiwen informed the Hidden King informed him about the development of the Hidden Alliance over the years. It had already far exceeded Yi Shiwen's imagination. As long as he had this devil character in his hand, All of his devil race martial arts would advance by leaps and bounds. This was an ancient character that was close to the great way of heaven and earth. The power it possessed made everyone look at it in a new light. Although they had all been subdued by the Hidden King, the Hidden King was not the leader of the Hidden Alliance. At best, he was a deputy leader. The real leader was someone else. Of course, this news was only spread among the higher-ups of the Allied forces. Otherwise, it would be a huge blow to the morale of the Allied forces. This was because even if they were to reluctantly join the alliance, it would leave behind a huge problem that might erupt in the future. Moreover, if they did so, the Hidden Valley would likely become the target of public criticism and everyone's enemy. In that case, if the Hidden Valley wanted to continue to develop further in the future, all the forces would be wary of the Hidden Valley. Now, there were more than 100 divine kings in the entire Hidden Valley. It could be said that they had reached the peak all of a sudden. Although they were still not comparable to those Emperor Lords' inheritances, their strength was not that far off from the Hidden Valley and those Emperor Lords' inheritances at the beginning. But what was terrifying was that not a single power had ever received a response. This was the most terrifying part. Since ancient times, there had been supreme experts who had wreaked havoc in the world, and all of them had been suppressed by imperial monarchs. Many of them had been the inheritances of imperial monarchs who had summoned back their ancestors. However, Yi Shiwen discovered that even the princes and princesses didn't have many emperor source. Only the crown princes had a bit more emperor source. However, they only had a few tens of thousands of emperor source. This was already the wealth of the crown princes. However, it was far from enough for Yi Shiwen. No one knew if there were any Emperor Lords left in the Tian clan. Just the Emperor and I, who might become an emperor, was a huge problem. Unfortunately, none of the major forces had the time to kill him. All of this was naturally due to the Hidden King and the others' continuous efforts to rope in those forces to join the Hidden Alliance. According to Yi Shiwen's original plan, he wouldn't choose to subdue others and recruit them into the Hidden Alliance. Even so, everyone believed that there should still be many experts hidden in the major forces. Those were the hidden trump cards of the major forces. They wouldn't show up easily. Even so, the strength of the Allied forces had greatly increased. It instantly made up for the losses caused by the previous losses. More than 30 king-rank sects had joined the Hidden Alliance. It was much better than Yi Shiwen's initial expectations. Everyone knew that the Hidden Valley was the core of the Hidden Alliance. If they weren't forced into a corner, who would join the Hidden Alliance so easily? Under the powerful offensive of the Tian clan, there were indeed many powers that they had originally set up that completely surfaced, defecting one after another. There were even many King Sects that were originally the backbone of the Allied forces that had defected, bringing many experts with them. However, most importantly, this was all thanks to the celestial race's hard work. Without them constantly destroying the forces of the various regal sects and forcing them into a dead end, they would not have been able to join the secret alliance so easily. This was also because they had seized some emperor origins from the princes and princesses. They might not be very convinced by Yi Shiwen, but they didn't dare to disobey the Hidden King's orders. This was because the Hidden King had naturally shown them his methods when he subdued them. Although it was still very eye-catching now, it was much better than becoming the public enemy. It was like a big hand was strangling them. It was really a terrifying thing for them to not have an Emperor Lord to oversee them. No one could escape by luck. They could only fight the Tian clan to the death unless they wanted to be their slaves. The Allied Forces headquarters, which was originally organized for this matter, quickly operated. In the beginning, it was only to deal with the Emperor opportunity. Now, it was facing the full-scale invasion of the Tian clan. The Allied Forces headquarters had regained its former prosperity. At this time, they only remembered that although the Hidden Alliance had been established for 100 years, they had never held a meeting. This itself was unreasonable. Now they understood that they were waiting for Yi Shiwen to come out of seclusion. Given his current strength, even an ordinary middle-stage quasi-emperor expert would not be a match for him. In the past 100 years, he had absorbed the primordial spirit incarnation left behind by the Qin Emperor, and his strength had increased by more than a little. In the past 100 years, the Allied forces had already broken out several times with the Tian clan. Especially after the Tian clan invaded the heavens, the major forces finally reacted in the face of the bloody facts. Everyone didn't react when they found out who the leader of the Hidden Alliance was. It was actually Yi Shiwen. They hadn't even taken a glance at him in the past. He was a junior of the younger generation. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion. In an instant, the number of experts on all sides had increased. Just the number of God Kings had increased by a lot. In the past countless years, the Allied forces had also cultivated many experts. It was just that many experts did not usually show up. If it had not reached this stage, they probably would not have shown up. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties. Countless gods had fallen. Many gods who were said to be indestructible had died tragically. This made people understand how terrifying it was. The overall situation was definitely not good for the Allied forces. As more and more experts from the Tian clan came out of the sealed land, the Allied forces of the Tian clan became stronger. Although they had suffered heavy losses, they were still increasing and replenishing their forces. Their overall strength did not decrease but increased. Apart from raising his strength to the peak stage of the king-ranked realm in one go, he had also completely refined the demon character. Although this was an ancient character that was naturally formed in heaven and earth and could not be completely refined by humans, Yi Shiwen could now unleash its true power. As for the ridiculous rumors that Yi Shiwen had defeated a quasi-emperor, they naturally did not believe them. The Hidden Valley's Valley Master coming out of seclusion was naturally a big deal. Everyone in the Hidden Valley treated this as a big deal. Of course, at the same time, they were convinced by the Hidden King's formidable strength. In this chaotic world, possessing formidable strength was the only way to survive. No one could overlook a powerful expert who was at the level of one of the 10 Great King tiers. The news that the Hidden Alliance's leader was about to come out of seclusion spread throughout the Hidden Valley and quickly spread to all the major forces in the Hidden Alliance. Because of the original agreement, they were now considered subordinates of the Hidden Alliance. Naturally, they had to listen to the Hidden Alliance's summons. Otherwise, the entire Hidden Alliance would become their enemy. Many people who were born after the Second Heavenly Resistance War finally felt for the first time how cruel the war with the Tian clan was. Once the DNI attained the Tao, the Alliance Army's seemingly evenly matched situation would instantly collapse. There would be no other possibility. With this demon word in hand, his 6 paths of reincarnation fist had not only been cultivated to the great completion realm, but its power had also increased significantly. There were mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere. Compared to this war that had affected the entire heavens, all the previous battles between the various races and sects could not be compared. After breaking through to the peak of the King realm, Yi Shiwen did not choose to continue seclusion. This was a chaotic world, and it was not suitable for him to stay in seclusion for a long time. Moreover, his large source had already been depleted, and it was not suitable for him to continue seclusion. Naturally, he had to come out of seclusion. After replenishing their strength, the Allied forces began to defend and counterattack. They attacked repeatedly and continuously, and several battles broke out with the Tian clan's army. With the Hidden King's deterrence, they naturally did not have the guts to return. More importantly, they had long heard about the Hidden Alliance Master and were very interested in him. Now, not only had he become a divine king, but he had also become their immediate superior. From their point of view, this was just a method that the Hidden King had used to promote Yi Shiwen. This was to build momentum for his successor. The entire situation was not optimistic. However, the most terrifying thing was not that the Tian clan's strength was getting stronger and stronger. Instead, it was the various Emperor Lord's inheritances. Apart from those who had already been confirmed to have fallen, such as the Ancestral Dragon, the remaining Emperor Lord's inheritances were all trying to summon back the supreme existence that had once founded their sections. However, the only thing that had consumed a lot of energy was the Arch Source. More than half of it had been depleted by Yi Shiwen. If he wanted to use the Time Robe, he could only use it once at most. After that, he would have to return to the Devil Monarch's treasure house. Of course, No one else had an artifact like the time robe that could be activated at any time. Before they could come to a conclusion, an even bigger piece of news came. The Hidden Alliance had issued an alliance order to convene an alliance meeting. Chapter 28:08. No matter what they thought, they had to go to the Secret Alliance when they were summoned by the Secret Alliance. Moreover, many people knew very well that the situation in the multiverse had become extremely bad. No matter what, the Secret Alliance should come up with a plan. Especially in the past few years, the Secret Alliance had been fighting everywhere and expanding its territory. It was impossible not to attract the attention of other forces. If it was in a peaceful era, it would be impossible to rise like this. However, it was different now. Not to mention, the heavenly race was the biggest enemy of the various races. None of the major forces could spare any manpower to deal with the Secret Alliance's battles in the city or the East and West. However, in the eyes of the various forces, although the Secret Alliance was worth being vigilant about, it was not to the point where they would be shocked. This alliance of many regal sects was unreliable in the first place. Although not everyone harbored ulterior motives, it was inevitable that they would harbor dissenting thoughts. After all, it was all temporary and even a little forced. They had joined the Secret Alliance because of the strong pressure from the heavenly race. Although there had been such a successful example, it was the establishment of the martial sect. When the martial sect had first been established, the situation might not have been any better. In fact, it was even worse. This was because when the martial sect was first established, the Qin Emperor almost single-handedly fought for the world. The Secret Alliance had the core of the Hidden Valley, so the conditions were much better. However, the martial sect was only able to become a martial sect because the Qin Emperor swept through the world and defeated strong enemies. How could the Hidden Valley be compared to the Qin Emperor? Therefore, the crowd did not really care. Fortunately, with the establishment of the Secret Alliance, the sects and worlds of the various forces had gradually moved to the vicinity of the Hidden Valley. They did not need others to ask them to move to the vicinity of the Hidden Valley. This was also to support each other and to be able to gather a strong force in a short period of time. The opponent they had to contend against was naturally the invincible heavenly race. They were different from the inheritances of the Emperor. Those inheritances had unimaginable strength and powerful trump cards that they had not used. Naturally, they were as stable as Mount Tai. Compared to them, they did not have such confidence. Compared to the heavenly race, they were too insignificant. Only by gathering together could they barely resist. And the day of the Secret Alliance had finally arrived. Everyone in the Hidden Valley was welcoming the arrival of this day. The emissaries of the various powers gathered together. From time to time, powerful gods could be seen streaking across the horizon in the form of streams of light. The direction they were heading towards was a huge floating continent. The entire continent was pulled over by someone with great magic power, forming an incomparably huge square. The square was paved with countless white jades, and it was exceptionally beautiful. Clouds lingered around it, making it seem like a paradise in the mortal world. In the surroundings of this continent, there were many rugged immortal mountains. Silver-white waterfalls hung upside down in the sky, flowing out from the depths of time and space, flowing towards an unknown world. The rainbow acted as a bridge that stretched across the sky. Powerful figures constantly passed through the rainbow bridge to enter the continent. Ever since this venue was built, it had not been used many times. This was because an entire continent would not be used as a venue for an ordinary event. But this time it was different. All the major forces were present, and there was no lack of large races among them. Among those who joined the Secret Alliance, apart from the various regal sects, there were quite a number of unaffiliated people who joined as well. For a time, all kinds of rare birds, beasts, and powerful creatures that only existed in legends appeared on the Rainbow Bridge. Many disciples of the Hidden Valley who were in charge of receiving them were secretly amazed. It was only now that they could finally feel the power of the Secret Alliance. Although many experts of the Hidden Valley had been injured in the battle against the heavenly race in the past 100 years, more and more powerful figures had joined. This had greatly improved the strength of the entire Hidden Valley and even the Secret Alliance. And now, their leader was about to come out of closed-door training. The entire Hidden Valley was actually very curious about Yi Shiwen. In particular, many of the new disciples were very curious about Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's name could only be said to be in a legendary state. Among them, Yi Shiwen had almost risen like a comet. He had rushed to the position of a high-level member of the Hidden Valley in one go before they had the chance to meet. And now, he had even become the Alliance Master of the entire Secret Alliance. Naturally, they were very curious about such a legendary figure. However, they did not dare to get too close. Almost everyone present was either a God King or a Divine Master. There were more than 100 God Kings alone, and they were all present. As for the number of Divine Masters present, it was several times that. For a moment, the entire place was bustling with activity. Divine wills were flying everywhere, and many God Kings were using this opportunity to communicate. In particular, many Divine Kings' topics were inseparable from Yi Shiwen. Is Yi Shiwen really as powerful as the legends say? I don't believe it. Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's womb, it has only been a few years. How is it possible? I also feel that it is a little unreal. It is very likely that those people in the Hidden Valley are bragging to boost his reputation. No matter how powerful Yi Shiwen is, there should be a limit. Everyone says that he can blow up a quasi-emperor. How is that possible? To these Divine Kings, a quasi-emperor was a legendary existence that they could not even look up to. How could they dare to believe that a junior could blow up a quasi-emperor? That was simply impossible. Among those present, only the few experts of the Beichen clan remained silent, especially Beichen Yuan. He had seen Yi Shiwen cross the void and kill a Divine King with his own eyes. He still remembered that terrifying power even now. He was not sure whether Yi Shiwen could blow up a quasi-emperor, but he understood one thing. Even if Yi Shiwen could not reach the legendary level, he was still terrifyingly powerful. At the very least, he was in existence at the level of the 10 great Divine Kings. That was someone that they needed to look up to. To ants, a giant was already very tall. Did it matter whether this giant was 50 meters or 100 meters? The important thing was that this giant could crush them to death at any time. Hence, they did not participate in their discussion. On one hand, they were disdainful. On the other hand, they were a little worried. It would be bad if Yi Shiwen found out. Yi Shiwen had forced them to join the Secret Alliance back then. However, they were feeling much better now that the Secret Alliance was expanding. Moreover, they were the first force to join the Secret Alliance. So, they had always been taken care of by the Secret Alliance. It didn't matter whether it was the treatment of a senior member or buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold coins. They had received tangible benefits. Therefore, they were naturally unwilling to say anything. Beichen Yuan looked at these Divine Kings. Although it was not convenient for him to say much, he still felt somewhat disdainful. What was there to discuss about these people? No matter what, they would have suffered heavy losses if it were not for the Secret Alliance's help. This was also the truth. Since that was the case, it did not matter who the leader of the Secret Alliance was. Not long after the various Divine Kings arrived, the Divine Kings of the Secret Alliance also appeared. Apart from the Flame Overlord, who was in charge of communication in the Alliance Army headquarters, all the other Divine Kings had arrived. The leader has arrived. For a moment, the entire venue quieted down. Everyone looked at the Rainbow Bridge and saw a figure slowly walking over. It seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. In just an instant, he had already flown into the venue and sat on the leader's throne. Everyone was secretly shocked. Even the Divine Kings were no exception. They all realized that their divine senses could not lock onto the other party's body at all. It seemed like he was right in front of them, but in reality, he was very far away. It was as if he was separated by an unknown amount of space. They could not see where he was at all. Moreover, he was so fast that he did not give them any time to react before he had already appeared on the throne. It seemed as if he was walking over slowly, but in the next second, he had already appeared on the throne. It felt as if he had walked over step by step in front of everyone's eyes. Images of him walking over appeared in everyone's mind, and his speed was just too fast. Everyone was shocked. Although they could not see clearly, their evaluation of Yi Shiwen had increased significantly. At this moment, the Hidden King could clearly sense that Yi Shiwen's aura was even sharper. It was like a boundless ocean, making people feel that it was boundless and powerful. Before this, Yi Shiwen gave people the feeling that he was just an ordinary person. The Hidden King guessed that it was probably because he had just come out of closed-door training and had not fully mastered it. However, this was also good. This was exactly what was needed to subdue those arrogant and domineering divine kings. Yi Shiwen sat on the throne. He could feel that everyone's eyes had turned towards him. They were all focused on him. This was their alliance master? Everyone had this question in their minds. Although Yi Shiwen was already famous, not many people had seen him in person. Greetings, leader. Under the Hidden King's lead, everyone bowed in unison. Everyone rise. Yi Shiwen propped them up, and everyone immediately felt an unimaginable force lifting them up, making them unable to continue bowing. Although not many of them were sincere, this also showed the tyrannical strength of this new leader. It was enough to raise people's eyebrows. He was definitely not the successor that the Hidden King had pushed out. Didn't they see that the Hidden King had also bowed down? He did not seem reluctant at all, no matter how they looked at it. This didn't seem like the way a successor would treat a junior. On the contrary, he was truly treating Yi Shiwen as the leader. Yi Shiwen's gaze swept across the crowd, and he said, I am indebted to everyone's favor. As a junior, I am able to ascend to the position of the leader. I will not say anything unnecessary. I will definitely lead the Hidden Valley to develop and take advantage of the situation. Everyone, please wait and see how far I can go in the future. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.